Welcome, everyone, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Welcome to Zelda and to Tim in the live chat here already. Clearly, I'm running behind again tonight. I'm not sure what happened today. Things just got backed up, but I did my other videos and had to do some taxes, so I got caught up on some things. But today, clearly, we're going to talk a little bit about the no confidence vote in Sheriff Nanos. That is a wild situation where the entire law enforcement in Pima County doesn't have confidence in Sheriff Nanos. That's crazy. And then there's an Ashley Banfield video to go over. And that really might be it tonight. Now, I was looking into the Duggar case for other future nights, and Law and Crime Network's video on that did get a lot of traction. But when I talked about it the other day, people didn't really seem to care as much. And I mean, it's a tragic thing. It's like disgusting thing, really. It's about CSA and how a couple of the brothers now have been in trouble for this. But I'm trying to figure out outside of the drama piece, what are the lessons from it? Like, what can we talk about? And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's anything good to really mention in it. It's not like the Guthrie case or the Michael McKee case or the Nick Reiner case. There's at least other things to talk about. But in the Duggar case, I don't know, it's just like icky. But you can let me know, chat, if you want me to talk about that at a point. Tim says, Jared, FYI, JLR's ex said she was releasing evidence on Friday. Is releasing evidence or was releasing evidence this upcoming Friday or last Friday? Because that would be pretty different, right? If it's this coming Friday, we'll have to see what comes out. I'll be curious. And outside of that, once she brings that up, I mean, then it just comes down to the court date, really. And that's in April sometime for JLR. And I'm also unclear about what that court date is even about. It's just a no contact order. It's not a felony assault charge. It said charges are pending. So what does that mean? I'm not sure. It seems like the whole thing's a bit of a gray area to me. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see, Tim, what she comes up with. She's doing an interview where she will share evidence Friday afternoon. All right, well, if she wants to do that, that could be interesting. Maybe we can go over that Friday afternoon. Christy, welcome. Song Bits, welcome. Jared in the Duggar case is about control and being secretive. That whole cult is kind of thing. That's the educational part would be more about the cult, in my opinion, and how dysfunctional families work. Like the actual CSA part's dark, but how it gets to that point would be the learning opportunity to me. D, welcome. Well, you didn't miss much. I've only been alive for a few minutes here. I was running behind today. More like, Christy, it's not even about being secretive. It's more about like the dysfunctional family system and sweeping problems under the rug. I don't know that much about it because I didn't watch the show. I don't know about their 19 kids. I don't know about the whole thing. But there's that other woman who, I'm not sure if she's a cousin, but she wrote a book about it. She wrote a book about it as a tell-all for telling the truth. Now, reading that book would be something that if I'm going to talk about the case a lot, I should read that book. And maybe I will. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll invite that woman on the show, by the way, because I am going to make a concerted effort to do more interviews as well. Queen Elizabeth, how are you? You're Peter and Chris cast. Oh, Christian. Peter and Christian John? That was an interesting conversation, wasn't it? They have differing schools of thoughts. It was kind of like a meeting of the minds there. Rooster, what's shaking? Shingles and RSV. All right, chap. Everyone's got to wish Rooster that he feels better soon. Shingles and RSV is a lot. RSV shot and Wellet apparently just fell asleep. Wow. Not too good, Rooster. Well, I see you're up and at 'em today, which is good. Yes, and while you're all here, like the video on the way in, leave your touch DNA on that like button, spank it, spank the like button, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Today I was late, like I said. Surely living wherever she is will call me out for that. Yes, everyone needs to wish Rooster a speedy recovery. Yep. I've talked to people about the Mormons cults, Christy. There's a lot going on with that. A lot of them in Utah, too.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for supporting me and my channel, and for following along with all the stories that I cover. Today is day 52 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. Today is Tuesday. I'm still back home in Florida. This is actually our News Nation bureau, our little bureau down here in Florida, although I'm never really here. You guys know I'm always on the road. But it's been nice to be home for it's been about a week and a half now since I got back from Arizona, just to kind of see my family, catch up on things at home. I do have a couple of things that I'm working on, and I think I'm going to be going back to Arizona soon. And I'll have more on that for you guys, because I just been working the story every single day, trying to follow up on some new leads and tips and information that I've been getting. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. In this episode, though, I'm going to be talking about the Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos. And if you've been following along, there's been a lot of drama behind the scenes involving Sheriff Nanos and now the Board of Supervisors in Pima County, which is like the governing body.
By the way, folks, send some good vibes for D. They're a little bit nervous about this dentist appointment they have tomorrow. So positive thoughts and good vibes their way.
For Pima County, being very critical of the sheriff, having a meeting, which I'll get into in a second, and wanting to now question him under oath about some issues, which I will explain in great detail. And I've told you guys this before, but when I first got to Arizona, and I think I was there for like 42 or 43 days straight, I never went home. But when I got there initially, I started to realize very, very quickly that there were a lot of people who just outwardly did not like the sheriff. And I was like, wow, it just, you know, I travel all over the country covering stories and crimes, and it just felt unusual that right away people were coming out of the woodwork telling me about issues that they had had with the sheriff in the past. And it was obviously a very contentious election, and he only won by 400 and something votes. And, you know, I take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt because politics does get involved, and he's an elected sheriff. So I kind of went into it thinking, you know, maybe this is just politics. But the longer I was there, I realized that a lot of people had real concerns with the sheriff, and they had for a long time. And some of this stuff was now just kind of bubbling into the national spotlight because of the Nancy Guthrie investigation. And I want to be fair to the sheriff. I mean, I've never, it's not my job to call out the sheriff and say what I think about him. You know, but I do think it's my job to talk to people who have these concerns, hear what they are, hear what they have to say about the Nancy Guthrie investigation, and then also try to talk to the sheriff. I had on the sheriff's former chief deputy, longtime friend. He was the sheriff's boss for decades. He was on my episode yesterday, if you want to check it out. And, you know, had a lot of concerns that he shared. And I've tried to get the sheriff's response to some of these things. But it's difficult. You know, he gave me an interview early on in the investigation, expressed some frustrations with me and my reporting and News Nation, just because we had highlighted some of these concerns. And I've had a hard time getting an interview with him since. He's done interviews with NBC News. He seems to do interviews with some of the local stations. But, you know, I guess the point I'm trying to make is I do want to be fair to Sheriff Nanos. And some of you haven't liked that I've said this, but I've said before, just my take on him with the Nancy Guthrie case in particular. Maybe he did make some mistakes, but I think overall his intentions are good, at least with that investigation. I mean, I think he genuinely wants to solve it and feels terrible for the Guthrie family. But there have been hiccups along the way. And again, I'm going to get into that in this episode. First of all, you know, and we've talked about this, the decision that was made to take down the crime scene very, very early on, which is kind of interesting because at a press conference, he said that, maybe he regretted that decision or could have done some things differently. But now he's basically, in any interviews that he's done, said he doesn't think he's made any mistakes and he wouldn't change anything. And he's happy with the way that him and his team have handled things. That's sort of been what he's been saying recently over the last week or so. So he's walked back some of the comments that he made early on about regretting. I remember he said something about regretting maybe taking the crime scene down too soon, but now he's kind of just taking the stance that they haven't done really anything wrong and that he doesn't regret anything. But what's interesting is there's this effort now to recall him, where they're gathering signatures. They have to gather more than 100,000 signatures, and it has nothing to do with the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Basically, there are claims that he lied on his resume and lied under oath, or didn't disclose things under oath about his professional past. I mean, he's been at the Pima County Sheriff's Office for decades, but before that, he was at the El Paso Police Department, and there's a local reporter that unearthed his personnel file from decades ago and found that he had been in trouble and suspended and had issues there, a variety of issues, and that he was under oath about something else and asked about his past and whether there are any issues in his past in that way. And he said no. And that is the basis now for this recall, saying that he lied under oath and that he did not disclose these issues in his past when he first got his job at the Pima County Sheriff's Office. So there's the recall that's ongoing, but this has also rose to the level of, it's gotten the attention of the Board of Supervisors, which again is the governing body over Pima County. And they talked about it at their meeting last night. That would have been Monday night. And no, I'm sorry, Tuesday night. I'm getting my days mixed up. They went into executive session. They ultimately voted unanimously to continue to look into this issue and to try to talk to the sheriff under oath about some of these issues. And I'm going to have one of the supervisors on with me in a second in this episode to explain exactly what they did, what his concerns are. And he has some other concerns about the sheriff, in addition to things with the Nancy Guthrie investigation that are really interesting that he's going to explain coming up in a second. But first, I just wanted to play for you. There was a session, obviously, like every public meeting, where members of the public are able to come up and speak to the board. And there were many that spoke about the sheriff. And there was also the union president, Sergeant Cross, who you've seen me interview before on my show, who is a sergeant with the department right now, who spoke, who you'll hear from him in a second. And they did another vote of no confidence for the sheriff, and it was unanimous. There's, I think, about 300 deputies in the union, and all of them voted that they do not have confidence in Sheriff Nanos. So, I mean, just think about that for a second. Every single one, according to the sergeant, voted no confidence, which is quite a statement. And again, going back to politics and unions, I've covered stories where, unions many times aren't happy with the boss. They're upset with the pay. There's issues here and there. But this does feel different, the fact that all of them voted no confidence. And I mean, they're obviously trying to make a statement there. But I wanted you to listen to some of the people who were speaking during the public comment.
My name is Laurie Moore. Sheriff Nanos is currently in the process of being recalled. As a person.
So Sheriff Nanos is currently in the process of being recalled. Brian Etten just mentioned that the entire law enforcement there, the detectives, sergeants, no confidence in Sheriff Nanos. That's wild. And like she just said here, there's a process to try to recall Sheriff Nanos, and that would, if it works, then there'll be another vote. But it's probably too late in terms of the Nancy Guthrie situation, but we are going to go over a TMZ video later that talks about new facts or tiny details that could make or break things. We'll see if we agree with that.
And helping to collect signatures, the mere mention of his name gets the clipboard snatched out of my hands, followed by, "Give me that. This guy has got to go." Most petition signers only know of Sheriff Nanos from the embarrassing reports on national news excoriating him nightly for a pattern of amateurish missteps in the gruesome disappearance of Pima County resident Nancy Guthrie. This does not bode well for the leading law enforcement officer in Pima County or the people who gave him that job. The sheriff's well-documented history with the El Paso Police Department should have never granted him employment in the Pima County correctional system, much less the climb to sheriff. The signs were there if anyone bothered to look. For example, there is a record of disciplinary action, including a multiple-day suspension for police brutality.
I'm Sergeant Aaron Cross, president of the Pima County Deputies Organization. As many know, a reporter recently uncovered the long-hidden, terrible record of Sheriff Chris Nanos from his time as an El Paso police officer. This includes purportedly beating a handcuffed suspect in the head with a flashlight, for which he was suspended and nearly indicted. This record, if properly disclosed, would have likely prevented him from being hired or from becoming a peace officer in the state of Arizona. For over 40 years, this has been concealed from the department and the voters of Pima County. Because of this scandal, our organization, the largest union of deputies in Pima County, has taken a vote. We asked our members a clear question: confidence in Sheriff Nanos to continue in office, or no confidence, and a call.
This is Sergeant Cross. He is the union leader. We saw him on Ashley Banfield the other day, and we saw him on Brian Netton way before that, and he's mentioning this no confidence vote now. Wendy, how are you? Julie, how are you? I saw you pop in here.
For his resignation. The verdict was unanimous. No confidence. He has lost the faith of his deputies and the community.
It's no secret the nation has eyes on Pima County. We have a sheriff who has numerous lawsuits, an FBI RICO investigation, deputy on deputy rape case, a pattern placing campaign opponents on leave. He has created a hostile work environment where in many cases officers or deputies question or disagree his actions or decisions. Retaliatory actions such as duty reassignment in most egregious circumstances, demotion are sure to follow.
Chris Nanos is an international embarrassment at this point. Now, I know that you guys didn't hire him. We elected him, unfortunately. But long before the Nancy Guthrie investigation, this man lied about his record to get hired at the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Recently, he lied under oath. And we know that he runs the sheriff's department with an iron fist, abusing his employees. We have one in the room today. Sergeant Aaron Cross has been absolutely abused by this man. Lieutenant Heather Lappin, who had the audacity to run against him for sheriff, was abused to the point that even though she was wildly well-educated and well-informed and so qualified for her job, that she fled to another police department where, frankly, they pay her better and treat her so much better. Women have been abused under this man. This county has been abused under this man.
So you can hear some of their concerns there.
So they're saying Sheriff Nanos has abused them, has abused Sergeant Cross, has abused other people under him. The former Undersheriff Rick Castiger, he would concur with that more than likely. And he's been accused of lying under oath about a suspension that he had years ago. Apparently, Sheriff Nanos got suspended twice in the same week. Once it was for being late, and I forget what the other time was for, but twice. And apparently that's something Sheriff Nanos has lied about under oath.
At this meeting, much of what was discussed about the sheriff was in executive session, which is behind closed doors, so we don't know what the supervisors were saying. But I do want to play, after the meeting ended, I was able to get in touch with Dr. Matt Hines, who is one of the supervisors on the board, and kind of find out a little bit about what's been happening behind the scenes and some of the concerns that he has and that the other supervisors have about Sheriff Nanos. Listen to what he had to tell me. Dr. Hines, I was watching some of the meeting. Obviously, I couldn't see what happened in executive session, and we just became familiar with Sheriff Nanos, when we started covering the Nancy Guthrie
Sure.
story
Yeah.
February 1st. So we don't know all the history, and there's clearly a lot of history with the sheriff.
There is some history for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you have concerns specifically about the Guthrie investigation? Does that play into all of this, or is it mainly other issues?
Honestly, it is a lot of issues. It's an accumulation of issues. The Guthrie investigation, because of its high profile nature, certainly, reframed things and made people in all over the world and certainly all over.
So apparently this case, the best thing it might do for the area is maybe get Sheriff Nanos out of there. And that might be good for the rest of law enforcement in the area. But again, this Nancy Guthrie situation might have just been what was the straw that broke the camel's back. That's what it seems like, because whatever damage was done was already done in terms of the Nancy Guthrie case. But moving forward, that's not the case. Moving forward, they can do something about their situation. That's where this recall vote comes in. That's why they had that confidence vote. And it was unanimous, no confidence in Sheriff Nanos. That's pretty damning, if you ask me.
The nation, just kind of tune in and more aware of the sheriff.
Hey guys, I was in Arizona for almost a month and a half, and my eating habits, they were not great. There was so much good Mexican food, and I found myself eating late at night when I would get done with work. So now that I'm back home for a bit, I am getting back into my Factor routine, and Factor is the sponsor of today's video.
Was in response to a lot of press interest, of course, with this high profile case. I'm not used to having people hang on my every word and holding me accountable for the things that I say, which is not reassuring. And very much, I think, representative of so much of his career in Southern Arizona and law enforcement, especially in light of the information we just received.
And that was Sheriff Nanos telling on himself there too. I'm not used to people hanging on my every word. It's like, dude, you're the sheriff. If anyone's going to be specific and mind their details, it should be you. Also, please remember to like the video while you're here. Like, support Shadow the Night Owl and his Hootie Snacks. It's been a little low on Hootie Snacks the last week. He needs to plumpen up a little bit. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. And to say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat.
About how he came over here from El Paso 42 years ago and withheld his very troubling work history. He would not have been able, he's frankly, and one of the questions I hope, we'll see what the lawyers recommend, but certainly a question I would like to ask him is, okay, so somebody with 5 years work history in El Paso with 8 suspensions, 37 days total of suspensions, who came to your department today, what would you hire them for, if at all? I would love to know that answer, because the answer is he's not eligible with that kind of a record for any employment in the county, not right now. And I suspect that had those been who were involved with the hiring process back in 1984, I think it was, known about that very troubling work history, he would never have been hired, and he certainly would never have been certified through the AZ Post. That's the peace officer group for state of Arizona. Every person in law enforcement has to be have AZ Post certification. Like I have to have, I have to be a licensed medical practitioner to see patients as a physician, and so on and so forth. So that's just what law enforcement have to do in the state of Arizona. Same thing with every other state. He wouldn't be able to qualify for that, based on what we've learned.
So what we've learned already is, since he lied before, he basically got the job under false pretenses. So he never should have been sheriff to begin with. If he told the truth, he never would have been sheriff. Now, this shines a light on other issues because this happens all the time. People lie their ways into positions of power all the time. And if the truth were to be present and evident, they never would get where they are. So it's important. It's important to report this kind of thing, because once they're there, the only thing you can do is hold them accountable, and you hold them accountable by enforcing consequences. That's all you can do. And also, by the way, super chats, great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. And like I said, Memberships give you access to the members only live streams.
Especially based on the fact that we just found out that he committed perjury, it appears, in a recent deposition. I can't remember the exact date, but it was in December of 2025. That's not 42 years ago. That is 3 months ago. And it's just unacceptable. It's tarnishing, and it really, you have to have honor and integrity, and you need to be held accountable for the things you do when you're in elective office, but especially when you are not only elected, but also the highest ranking law enforcement official in Pima County for the largest law enforcement agency in Southern Arizona. You have to be held to a much higher standard. So what I continue to be surprised by, I wasn't surprised nearly as much by the revelation that came from that Arizona Republic article about his work history as I was by the fact that it's been almost 2 weeks and we still haven't seen his letter of resignation, because that's the right thing to do.
So you mentioned that he was under oath, and was he asked about, have you had any previous suspensions? Is that what the question was?
Yes, that's right.
And he
I
said
can-
no.
Correct. I will, if it's a little weird to do this on camera, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm pretty sure that's what I read.
Yes, that is. So here's the deposition. Okay, there's a deposition.
I mean, here's the thing. There are some sheriffs throughout the country and the world that are pretty good. And the rest of their department likes them. And they have each other's back. This is kind of more of an outlier here, where the rest of the department doesn't even like him. Sheriff Nanos. And Sergeant Cross was telling Brian Etten that before. So this is a less common situation, but it certainly happens. And yeah, there's crooked cops. There can be crooked sheriffs. Absolutely. But I say they're the majority? No, I don't know if I would say that. But they certainly exist.
Report, page 13. All right, so here we go. So going back, they were talking about a lot of his work history coming from El Paso, all that stuff. And then there we go. Okay, prior experience and okay. Have you ever received discipline as a law enforcement officer? Yes. What was the nature or extent of the discipline that you received? Primarily, it would have been like, I'm not a very good driver. Okay. So I have a lot of car accidents, and a letter for this or a documented verbal for that. Did you ever receive a discipline that rose to the level of suspension? No. That's from a deposition.
He was suspended several times, right?
8 times. He was suspended 8 times, and some of them we don't even know what it was for. The meeting went very long. Executive session was 3.5 hours, so I truncated my public.
So he'd been suspended before. I know one was maybe for being late.
Comments considerably, but I hit on kind of some of the highlights. But here we are. I had it ready to. I was going to read the entire disciplinary history, which is a little bit excessive, but because it's like 2+ pages. Yes. So some of it's like abusive language, tardy, shot fired. That was suspension 1 day. I wonder what that was about. Brutality, that's troubling. More shots fired. Oh, that was okay. Failure to report for duty, 1 day, LWOP, leave without pay, right? Off-duty conduct, threats, reprimand. Yeah, so it goes on. But violation of rules and regulations, suspension 10 days. Doesn't say exactly what that violation was.
So it's 10-day suspension.
He had a 10-day suspension. He had multiple 1, 2, 3-day suspensions, usually for stuff like, and that whatever that the leave without pay one. I'm sorry, I'm looking down a little bit because I'm reading it.
No, it's fine.
So yeah, civil suit against city. What? Okay. Yeah, so suspensions. So it's 37 days total of suspension time, and it was 8 occasions. This is over 5 years, and I've heard from so many people in law enforcement. They're apoplectic about this. You cannot retain this high office. You can't get the respect of the.
So this was all known. How did he still win? Right? Because they got voted in, people just looking at D or R. But if you're an R in that district, I mean, how do you lose to that? And yeah, you only lose by less than 500, but still, like, you still lost. So you didn't do a good enough job getting your information out there, apparently. If they knew this, I don't think they would have supported them, even with the D next to his name, right? And I mean, in law enforcement, it really shouldn't matter that much whether you're D or R. The law should be the law. That's my opinion.
1,500 hardworking men and women of law enforcement, both on the correctional officer side of things that are helping to deal with the jail, and also on the, of course, the deputies side of things as well. You can't be the head law enforcement officer when you yourself, at this point, he let his certification, that the peace officer certification, he let that lapse because you don't have to have it in the state of Arizona when you're an elected sheriff or a constable, which is weird because we give them guns and an automobile, 2 deadly weapons potentially. So it was 8 suspensions in a little over 5 years. And it is kind of unusual to have any suspension for most of our officers. So to have 8 in 5 years, this
8 suspensions in 5 years. I mean, that's a line that you can use if you're running against him. Sheriff, or the want-to-be sheriff, was suspended 8 times in 5 years. Is that the kind of person you want to be the head of your law enforcement? Your sheriff? Think about that, voters out there. I mean, that's what I would say. Now, some people, oh, you shouldn't be criticizing them and throwing stones at them. You should just be selling yourself. It's like, well, guess what? There's all sorts of studies on this, and they all do it. Republicans, Democrats, they all criticize the other side. So they must have information that says it works, right? So you got to sell yourself and play the game. That's how it goes.
is a really troubling record. He was frankly a bad cop. I don't know what that 10-day one was for, as I mentioned, but I'm scrolling down more. Yeah, lots of dereliction of duty, tardiness, unnecessary force, and discourtesy, whatever that. Okay, where is it? Excessive force, that one wasn't sustained. Habitual tardiness, excessive force, again, 15 days. And I went back and looked at it. In fact, I had someone send me the actual articles from El Paso's paper, that he used his flashlight to bludgeon a handcuffed suspect. So, right? I mean, he's subdued, he's handcuffed, right? And he beat the guy so severely that about the head and neck that he went into the ICU, and it precipitated a civil lawsuit against the police department.
So what does that sound like? I mean, it sounds like assault. And if it wasn't a law enforcement official, they would have said assault with a deadly weapon. I mean, let's face it, with law enforcement, nowhere is it more true that they have rules for thee, but not for me. You can be an officer and get away with a lot more than you could ever if you were a private citizen. This just proves it. Did you hear it? He sent someone that was handcuffed to the ICU, and it resulted in a civil lawsuit against the department. That's pretty bad. And again, this guy won by votes. So I don't know if they just were doing a bad job getting the information out there, or if it was just more like an anti-Trump vote from many people that were like, there's a fair amount of people that say, if this person supports Trump, I'm not going to support him. And I wonder if there's an element of that in here too somewhere.
He was initially suspended indefinitely. And then once things got sort of adjudicated, he was allowed to come back. That was in March of '82. That was like 5. And then habitual tardiness. And then what's the next one? Oh, and then eventually the next page for July of '82, insubordination and consistent inefficiency, which is like kind of one of my new favorite phrases. He was forced to resign in lieu of termination. None of that came through. Yesterday, my public records request, which I put in about a week before, did come back with 177 pages, including his entire partially redacted personnel file, as well as the initial application that he put in for a correctional officer and for deputy. And in each of those instances, it asked specifically why and what was the nature of your separation from the El Paso Police Department. Of course, that's pretty typical. And his responses on neither of them reflected what actually we now know to be the case. He said personal reasons and to get a better paying job on the first one. I believe the second one was personal/divorce, and then to improve myself or to better myself or something to that effect. Nothing about, well, I had to leave because they were about to fire me. That wasn't in there. And I don't know if there was an oversight role lapse on our part as a county, because background checks were part of any application to become a correctional officer or a deputy at that time. I don't know why it didn't happen.
Yes, remember to like the video, Shadow the Night Owl, my spirit animal needs his hootie snacks, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Should be able to get to 40,000 tonight, by the way. And I usually go live a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern. I was late again tonight, but I talk about true crime and current events, and I use my unique experience with mental health, addiction, narcissistic abuse, narcissistic family systems to give my unique insights on those things. And thank you to all the support I've been getting already.
And background checks are required to get AZ post certification, that peace officer certification I mentioned. So somewhere in that process, clearly he was not being fully open and honest or transparent about his history. And that is an unget-overable problem. We must hold law enforcement to an even higher standard, elected officials as well. And he's both of those things. And as I mentioned before,
And he's correct. Law enforcement and elected officials need to be held to a higher standard. But if you knew anything about our elected officials in America, not necessarily the case. In fact, they can get away with lots of things. It's unfortunate, but it sets the tone. It sets the tone.
Richard Nixon knew what to do, right? Like, I mean, he didn't put the country through an impeachment. He cannot, I believe, he's disqualified himself from retaining this position. So we'll see. I hope he does the right thing. I hope he doesn't make us, follow through with calling him before the board and having him testify under oath about these things, because he really should just hang it up.
So you're a Democrat, right?
I am. And he's a Democrat too.
He's a Democrat. That's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, so this isn't, oftentimes with these kinds of things, it's like Republicans versus Democrats or vice versa.
No.
But
No, I love this country. I took an oath to the Constitution and for the United States and also for the state of Arizona. And I take that very seriously. And so did Chris Nanos. And that's why, look, man, you conspired with and used resources of your office to deprive your general election opponent, a Republican who I actually supported, of her First Amendment rights. He threatened her with her job. He intimidated her and silenced her. He decided that there was a gag order. You have to go home, stay there from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday for the last 3 weeks of the 2024 campaign. Heather Lappin lost by 481 votes. That was a photo finish. 500,000 people voted in that election, and he put his thumb on the scale, and he did so using the seal right behind me. He used the trust and authority that was placed in him by the people of Pima County. He used that and abused that trust and authority and resources of this county to I believe, to create, to corrupt a fair election. And I don't say that lightly. Because I personally heard, I will say I did come out and endorse his opponent, Heather Lappin, in that particular election. And when I did that, I got multiple Republican friends and independents who said, oh gosh, I already sent in my ballot. And, we don't like the current sheriff. We don't like Nanos, but we saw some stuff that came out in the news that she was doing all this stuff that the sheriff said she was doing. So we didn't feel comfortable bubbling in Heather Lappin either. Okay, you don't need that. And I heard from maybe half a dozen people or so about that. When you lose by 481 votes, that requires a recount. I mean, it's pretty easy to see that the voters did not have the truth, right? They didn't know about his withheld work history. They didn't know that he has been.
We go over all the other YouTubers' videos to get all the information in one place. That's why. So that on this channel, you get all of the information. You're not just hearing one source, you're hearing all of the sources there possibly are. I mean, if that's a problem for you, you don't have to be here.
perpetrating a fraud upon the residents of Pima County for 42 years. That the first thing he did when he set foot in this county and was looking for work in Pima County was to mislead, misrepresent, and frankly, to just lie about his work history. And that is significant.
Do you think, I mean, you mentioned he should do the right thing in your words. Do you think that he would actually resign? Just because based on, I don't know him well at all. I never knew who he was before Nancy Guthrie, but just my experiences with him, he doesn't strike me as having that kind of a personality.
He's a very proud and stubborn man. And you're right. I don't know that he will do this. I just know that, I'm hearing from people every day. I don't have it with me, but I even got a kind of a funny postcard about it. It's not funny at all, actually, excuse me. But that's a different way of communicating. Usually I don't get postcards asking me to do things. In this case, get rid of the sheriff. But email every day, according to my staff, phone calls, voicemails coming in saying, what the heck is going on and why isn't the board doing something? We have very limited authority. We're not the Congress. George Santos, that famous situation, the Congress actually was able to expel him. And I would love to be able to do that. We can't even censure him. I don't know why. It's very restrictive in terms of what the county supervisors can do. There's a narrow pathway to vacating the office if he doesn't respond. If the board votes on April 7th, which I suspect they will, in follow-up to our executive session and public item today, if the board does vote, in fact, to require the sheriff to either come in person and testify after being sworn in, hopefully that results in truthfulness, or he can submit in writing, I guess notarized writing. He can swear in paper format too. If I were his lawyer, I would probably do that one. But if he chooses not to respond to one of our questions about some of the duties of his office, then there is a provision in statute, territorial era statute, that would allow us to vacate the office after 10 days of lack of responsiveness. But it's a very
So it sounds like it's a good case for Sheriff Nanos to step down and resign. That being said, and that's not even a political issue, but I wouldn't be surprised if politics is also playing a part of it too. But it just happens to be correct that in this case, yes, he probably should resign, and he shouldn't have been there to begin with. He's kind of smeared the name of the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and he should step aside at this point. I mean, he's old now. He's late 60s, 70. I mean, like, it's about time for him to step down anyway. Let somebody young and more in tune with the times take over.
But when you say vacate the office, you, as the board, could you throw him out as sheriff? Is that what you mean?
In that specific scenario, yes. He would either need to refuse to be sworn to testify or refuse to provide sworn written statement, or if he, for example, if I asked, or if the board asked, can you please tell us about the nature of how did you come to be employed, and can you explain why you appear to have provided false testimony while sworn in a deposition in December? His response to the media here has been, it's a long time ago, and do you want my high school diploma and my high school transcript while you're at it? And he's just...
Now, those are the ways that narcissistic people belittle and not address the point. They deflect and make light of it. Oh, do you want my diploma and my GPA? It's just a way to deflect and make you think you're ridiculous for even asking. It's a manipulation tactic to avoid accountability.
Dismissive, and again, not really answering the questions. And I didn't lie. He was on the radio on Friday, Bill Buckmaster's show, explaining how he didn't misrepresent his history in any way, shape, or form. Really? Okay, guy. So I don't know. But if he probably, I would say, this would be not following your legal advice. If he ignores his lawyer and decides to blow us off and not bother either coming in after 10 days due to that specific law, it's ARS 11-253 if you care, if that would allow us to vacate.
And here's another thought for you all. As someone who's worked in politics for years, I haven't for the last year, but I did for about 8 years. Local politics is probably more important than federal in most cases. So your local politics, your town, your county, your state, even, that's going to impact your life the most. Federal, I mean, people watch the news, and yes, what goes on in the federal world does impact the price of gases and some things like that, right? And the war in Iran, etc. But for the most part, the most direct impact on your life is going to be local. County, town, state. Remember that. So I said that to say this. Pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on locally. It's important.
The seat after 10 days of him not responding to us. Or if he shows up and just says, I refuse to answer. Or if he shows up and doesn't answer the question we ask, like he talks about his Corvette instead of responding to why he made, what he did with his work history, misrepresentation, that would be like, it might go to a court, but pretty clearly that would not be complying with the statute.
Yeah, and I was listening to you in the meeting. You mentioned a RICO investigation. You mentioned a high jail death rates.
For years.
Reaching out to the Attorney General at one point. I wanted to ask you specifically, though, just because, again, a lot of our followers are very invested in the Nancy Guthrie. Sorry, my light.
Sure.
The Nancy Guthrie case. And are frustrated by the lack of progress. I mean, do you think everything that you've said about the sheriff, all of your concerns about the sheriff, are playing into why we have not seen more progress?
I think, look, the entire 4-decade history of his presence here in Southern Arizona has been based on fraud. And so it is clear to me, listening just to the quote that we talked about before, I mean, like being surprised that people listen to their sheriff and want to hold him accountable. My goodness, it is clear to me that he is not capable or competent to lead in this office. He is more than tarnished. And that's not specific to any investigation. The most recent high profile one certainly has been shining light on things, but for example, I mentioned the RICO, and I didn't spend as much time in public as I was intending to because the meeting was going so very long. But I mentioned that because there is actually a video of him back in 2015 or 16, just laying into the FBI, just this anti-FBI screed because he was about to be indicted. The only reason he didn't get indicted was because the guy who knew where all the skeletons were buried, a gentleman by the name of Gagnapane, I know I can't spell that, he tragically committed suicide. And then the FBI or the U.S. attorney or whoever the prosecutors were decided to just drop it, though I suspect they had enough to indict him. So that's something that the voters did not like because he had been appointed sheriff in 2015 and then lost his election in 2016. So when the voters are informed, they make, I think, the right decision, right? Which is very different than what happened in 2024 for sure.
And just my last thing from for outsiders looking in who don't know you, who don't know the politics of Tucson.
Sure.
And you're very passionate about this. It sounds like this issue with the sheriff. I mean, have you had a beef with the sheriff for a long time? Is it personal in some way?
I'm highly allergic to incompetence and certainly to abuse of power, like we saw, I believe, in the election interference. And also, it's a Democrat. I mean, how in the world can Democrats say things about the president? Because he definitely does say some stuff about, doing things with elections and voter rolls that I don't care for. All of us, from Attorney General Mays right on down, are in lockstep saying, no, that's not okay. Elections are run by the 3,000 counties. Leave it. Fine. So we have a person in the sheriff who not only talked in some ways like the president talks, but did it. He did it. He effectively locked up his opponent, forced her to stay home, and then put out all sorts of false information about her using county resources and letterhead.
And this is
wow. So it sounds like Sheriff Nanos used some dirty pool tactics here and used a smear campaign. Now, this guy, apparently he said, he doesn't like what the president says, President Trump, of course, about elections. But then he's accusing Sheriff Nanos of actually doing the things that Trump talks about. Interesting. Now, this guy, I guess he's a Republican, right? But he's, I guess, not all on board with Trump, perhaps.
The Republican that you're standing up for as a Democrat, right? I mean, when you talk about his opponent.
I would just say I'm standing up for the Constitution, and
Yeah.
I'm standing up against a bully and someone who's abusing their authority.
So wait a minute. So he says this guy's a Democrat. I guess I'm confused as to what he is. Let's rewind for a second here.
Opponent forced her to stay home, and then put out all sorts of false information about her using county resources and letterhead.
And this is a Republican that you're standing up for as a Democrat, right? I mean, when you talk about his opponent.
I would just say I'm standing up for the Constitution, and
Yeah.
I'm standing up against a bully and someone who's abusing
All right. So this guy's a Democrat. I thought he was a Republican by how he was talking, but he's not. He's a Democrat.
their authority. And to back to the FBI for a second, because you were asking about any tie into Guthrie's investigation. The reason I mentioned that RICO situation and his very volatile response and angry screed about the FBI, it's not surprising to me. That's informed me a little bit. I kind of had, frankly, that I didn't remember about the RICO thing. So once I was reminded about that and saw that video clip, I'm like, oh my gosh, this explains why he would never give the investigative lead role over to the FBI fully. This explains why he was trying to say to the press why he was sending lab, like, I don't know if it was DNA or what, he was sending stuff out for testing to some third-party lab that the county has to pay for. And when asked by one of the media members, like, why would you not use the FBI? He said it was less expensive. But if the FBI is involved in an investigation, it's free. So like and they won't say this because they're professionals and they're not political. The FBI has been so very frustrated, and so many law enforcement folks are reaching out to me to talk about the Nanos situation. But and I've talked to 2 agents who will not, of course, say anything publicly. But it's been difficult. It's been very difficult. And so, look, whatever the reasons, I don't believe he can continue in office.
Are the FBI agents still because we heard that early on. We had sources early on saying that they weren't keeping the FBI in the loop and there was a lot of frustrations. I wasn't sure if maybe that had resolved. Are you still hearing that?
That is, and maybe some of that is retrospective just from like February, and now we're approaching the end of March. Also, at this point, it's not the same level or intensity of investigation, tragically. Right. So we're at a different stage, as you know. So no, I haven't heard anything in the last few weeks about that. That was in the middle to end of February.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, Dr. Hines. I know you had a long day, so thank you for doing this.
I appreciate Dr. Hines for taking the time to talk with me. I will see how all of this plays out. You know, don't forget, Sheriff Nanos is elected. I mean, elected by the people. It's an elected position. So it's not, you can't just throw people out who have elected positions. I mean, if he was a police chief or someone appointed by the board of supervisors or by the local government, then they can vote and they can fire people. But obviously, when you are an elected official, that is just not how it works in America. So there are processes that have to happen, like what we're seeing happen with the supervisors, the board, and also this effort to recall the sheriff, which means that there would be likely a special election where people would then get to vote and decide how they want to move forward. Of course, there's also the option that the sheriff could retire and just be like, I don't want to deal with all this stuff. But, you know, my take on that, just from what I do know about the sheriff, is he doesn't strike me as the kind of person who would just sort of give in and retire just because of all of this pressure. And back to the Nancy Guthrie investigation, you know, we really don't know what's happening behind the scenes. You know, I've got some pretty good sources. I don't get the indication that there's a ton of movement behind the scenes in terms of a suspect or a really, really good lead. I do know that there's a lot of movement just in general, that it is a very active investigation, that they're working hard every day, that there are new leads coming in, that they're following up on, that they're pounding the pavement, that they're back in the neighborhood. So I don't think it's a cold case. But what I'm getting at is that I don't think it's about to be solved from what I can tell and know.
By the way, chat, random question. Who is Kate Beckinsale? Danielle, how are you? So I see this person, Kate Beckinsale, is very apparently a popular person, but she shared something of mine on Instagram, and I was like, who is this person? I know the name, but I don't know where she's from.
But again, I go back to Brian Koberger. You know, there was a lot happening behind the scenes that we didn't know about there, and I was critical of the police, and a lot of us were critical of the police during that time. And then we found out later, wow, they were really making progress behind the scenes. So we're just going to have to wait and see here. I know the FBI is heavily involved too when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. There's a task force, so it's not just the sheriff handling this, but you know, he is technically in charge, which he made clear in that radio interview that I heard with, you know, he did a local radio interview. That was a couple of days ago. I did an episode on that. You know, he's also kind of saying, well, look, I'm the sheriff, but I'm not actually in charge of the investigation. I don't do the day to day, but he technically is, you know, he's in charge. He's the sheriff, you know, he's the top guy. So we'll see how all of these issues play out. I'll keep you posted with any developments on the case. And everything else that I'm working on. And I, again, appreciate you guys for watching, appreciate you guys for subscribing, sticking with me through all these ups and downs of the case. I just hope, like I say this a lot of times, but I hope there's a resolution soon. I think of the Guthrie family. I think of everything that they're going through. I think about what an amazing woman Nancy Guthrie is, some of these stories that we've heard about her and the old videos that we've seen of her. And it just breaks my heart. So I hope, beyond all the drama with the sheriff and the politics and all that craziness, I hope there's a resolution for the family. So I'll keep you guys posted. Thanks again for watching and subscribing, and I'll talk to you guys later. Hey guys.
All right. On to the most important TMZ video that people are talking about.
A lot of people believe there's more than one person involved. Where are the footprints? There's no drag marks, there's no scuff marks, there's nothing that shows there was any type of fight. If you have two assailants in that home, why do you have to get physical with somebody 84 years old? You can control her without hitting her. I don't have anything right now, factually, that dictates there was more than one person.
So today I am joined by Cheryl McCollum. She is an active crime scene investigator for a Metro Atlanta Police Department. She is also the author of the book Swans Don't Swim in the Sewer, Solving the Cold Case of the Flint River Killer's Daughter. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jackson.
Of course, you've been outspoken about the Nancy Guthrie.
Look at her name again.
The author of the book Swans Don't Swim in the Sewer, Solving the Cold Case of the Flint River Killer's Daughter. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me.
Cheryl McCollum, crime scene investigator. I always like to make sure we got the names
Today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jackson.
Of course, you've been outspoken about the Nancy Guthrie case before, and I'm interested to hear from a crime scene investigator's perspective. Is there anything that sticks out to you about the primary crime scene, Nancy Guthrie's house? Are there any details?
This is Harvey Levin 50 years ago. He went back to the Future and transported himself to this.
About that crime scene that might tell a different story to what the public knows?
You know, for me, I would have to say there's two things. One, from the video, the way he manipulates those flowers is so strange to me. I can't stop thinking about it. And then the other is obviously right there, the, blood spatter. There are 4 separate, to me, patterns there. So there's the drops, the 90-degree angle drops that you see that look like it might be from a nosebleed. Then there's the medium to high velocity spatter that some people have said they think that it's drops within a drop, but I don't. I think it's where she coughed. And then down from that a little bit, there's a transfer print. It looks to me, Jackson, like there was blood on somebody's hand right here and maybe on their palm where they just touched down. It almost looks like a Rorschach test.
That's the first I've heard someone mention that. Have you heard anyone mention that it looked like a palm on the ground? None of our former FBI agents said that, did they? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard it. But while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Spank that like button. Leave your DNA in the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat too.
You know, the thing where it looks like a butterfly or different animals to somebody. And then down a little bit further, there's a clear swipe where it was a clean surface and something that was bloody went right past it. So those 4 distinct different patterns tells me there was movement. And the thing that I find the most curious is that a lot of people believe and have been very outspoken that there's more than one person involved. Where are the footprints? Somebody would have been in front of her, leading her out, and there would have been a second person. There are no, footprints in that blood at all. There's no drag marks. There's no scuff marks. There's nothing that shows there was any type of fight. So the blood is very interesting. The flowers are very interesting. And I have been very outspoken. Obviously, as a crime scene investigator, they released it way too early.
Mm-hmm. And judging by the blood splatter patterns, you mentioned a nosebleed before, but is there anywhere else going off of these patterns that you think Nancy Guthrie was struck?
I mean, she could have been struck in the nose or the mouth, but if you look at the patterns, the little round ones, the 90-degree drops, some of them have what we call like a half moon. They're clear. That's indicative of oxygen.
We haven't really heard that. Now, we did hear one that it looked like a cough sneeze. That was true, right? We did hear that. But I did not hear about those half moons, meaning that it was indicative of oxygen in them, meaning like a cough. I did not hear that. This woman's given us some new information here, and this is why it's good to get new eyeballs and new brains on some of this, because they'll think of things that other people just didn't. So I like this woman.
Air was in that drop. So again, I tend to think nose or mouth for sure.
And so, you say that there's no footprints there, right? But are you also intimating that you think one person was involved instead of 2?
Again, I'm going to go off the evidence. We have somebody at the front door. We have one person. We have somebody that surveyed and was stalking the house before, whether it's, the January 11th date or the 24th date, it's one person. We don't have drag marks. We don't have scuff marks. We don't have footprints. I don't have anything right now, factually, that dictates there was more than one person. Now, again, when you start talking about what you believe or what you think, that's like a theory. That's not facts. So I'm literally just going off the blood, the lack of a secondary set of footprints, the lack of another person on video.
And I agree with that. I mean, there are no facts to say there was more than one person. To me, that was just speculation. Though speculation I happen to agree with, that there's more than one person, but I agree there's no clear evidence that there's more than one person. Both of those things can be true at the same time.
Where's the other person? Why don't we have it? Why haven't they said, the back door caught this person, or a ring camera caught 2 or 3 people crossing the backyard? We don't have that. So just what I have so far, we have somebody caught on video more than once. We have no bloody footprints coming behind Nancy that we know of, that we can see. And so for right now, it's one person. And here's the other reality. It's a whole lot harder to keep 3 people quiet when there's $1 million on the table and ain't nobody tried to touch that money.
Let me put you in a hypothetical. Let's say that you arrive at the crime scene and you're presented with the evidence that you currently have at your disposal. What tactics are you utilizing to your advantage to try and build a profile on the person that did this?
One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to put up double tape. So I'm going to put tape up around my crime scene, and then I'm going to have a secondary tape basically making a track, Jackson, so that, people that come there that are higher ups, whether it's the chief of police, the sheriff, somebody that is involved with the FBI, they can walk the whole perimeter without entering my scene at all. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a media staging area as far down that road as I can to my left, and I'm going to put our command center as far down the road as I can to my right. I don't want these people following me. I don't want these people right here at her front door. We've seen it. We've seen people walk right up to her front door, follow FBI agents down the road, literally filming them walking side by side. That just shouldn't happen. I would also put some tents up. You would not see me take a big old stick and start, searching manhole covers and sewers and things like that. That wouldn't happen. Again, she's got grandchildren and children, and I would be really aware that they're going to probably watch this. So I wouldn't have that happen. One of the things that I would have done, I would have kept it open until I was satisfied we had gotten everything. I would have kept it open until I knew whether or not we were going to have video. And the reason is I may think or believe where he may have, entered the home, where he may have exited. I want to know for sure. That video is going to tell me. She also has some cameras on the inside. Where is the blood inside the house? What does her bedroom look like?
Now, those are all great questions that local law enforcement knows. And the FBI on the team, they know this. They know what the bedroom looked like. They know what the blood looked like inside the house. They know all of that. They just haven't told us. Now, Ashley Banfield's source has said some things about blood being tracked in the house, but we don't really still have a clear picture because they're keeping us in the dark about it. But I agree with this woman. Of course, they shouldn't have opened up the crime scene too soon. Of course not. Of course, they should have taken the mat. Of course, they should have let the FBI look over the house and see if they can find anything local law enforcement didn't. But instead, they didn't even let them try. So I totally agree with this woman so far.
Savannah and the sheriff have been very clear that she was pulled from her bed. So I can only imagine that her comforter and her sheets show that they were maybe drugged to the floor. When was she hit? When does the blood start? Why do you have to hit her? That's another reason I think it's just one person. If you have two assailants in that home, why do you have to get physical with somebody 84 years old? You can control her without hitting her. That's not necessary. So that tells me this person wanted to be violent.
I think one person could have controlled her too, but I agree with her assessment that that was probably part of the goal. Probably. I think ultimately it was a hit. So how they did it along the way, I don't know what their plan was for that. But unfortunately, I think the goal was to end her life. I do think that.
This woman's got a heart condition. She can't walk very far on her own. There ain't no reason to hit her. If you surprise her at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning wearing a mask beside her bed, honey, you're in control of that scene. She's going to do everything you tell her to do. So the fact that you had to pull her out of bed, the fact that she's bleeding, you're violent. So that backpack we know is stuffed with something, Jackson. I don't know what it's stuffed with, but I know it don't take 41 minutes to get an 84-year-old woman out of that house.
This woman could also do crime scene expert ASMR, Southern ASMR.
So whatever he had, he used. He went mission ready. And that's a concern that I have, but it also tells me it's one person.
Just for clarity, what do you mean by 41 minutes?
I mean, he's in the house for so long. So if you know when he's at the front door, and we know approximately when the phone detached, from her pacemaker, that's an extraordinary long period of time. What was he doing? You kick in the back door, you go to the bedroom, you grab her, you drag her out, you throw her in.
And remember, folks, just because the Nest Cam was taken down and the pacemaker was disconnected at 2:28 doesn't mean that person was inside the house the whole time. I always have to say that when I hear 41 minutes, but they might not have been in the house the entire time. But please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Leave your DNA on that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I go live almost every night at a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern. I was late again tonight. But we talk about true crime and current events, sometimes narcissism, domestic violence, etc.
the car, you're gone. You ain't talking about 7 minutes. We've got 21 minutes. We've got 30 minutes. We've got a longer period of time than it would take for anyone to kidnap somebody. So again, that's telling me that might not have been what this was. It's telling me that he was targeting her for whatever reason he was targeting her, but it doesn't appear in any way to be a traditional kidnapping. Even look how he acts at the front of the door. He ain't in a hurry. He saunters up. I think he's going toward the window because, the door has windows on either side. He's maybe trying to look in. He sees the camera.
Sondering. That's the word of the day. Sondering. Sonder your way over to the like button, please. And sonder your way over to the subscribe button.
He does that weird thing with his hand where he's not really, covering the lens. It's almost like he's making the letter C. That's weird. His pistol, it's all wrong. The way he's carrying the handgun is wrong. He looks ridiculous. He's got a mouth light. He's got a backpack that's filled. Well, then he turns around and he engages the mouth light on the ground like he's looking for something. Then he goes to these flowers. Once he gets the flowers, he pulls some of the leaves off and then breaks them, comes back to the camera and is trying to manipulate them to like almost hang them on the camera itself. Very strange. But again, he's not damaging the camera. He's not getting rid of the camera. He walked past 100 rocks, Jackson. Who walks past all those rocks when all he had to do is just bust the camera real quick? But he's fooling with these flowers. I believe this.
And everyone should welcome Livin' the Mod, sondering her way over to the live chat.
Person is not well. I think mentally he's got some challenges going on, and that's what we're seeing. Because every single expert, I guarantee, that you have talked to has told you the handgun is odd, the placement is odd, the flowers is odd, the way he reaches for the doorknob first and then goes immediately to this weird thing where he's not covering the lens. You can still see his face the whole time. It's just odd. Why do you take her? Why do you hurt her? Why do you not ransom her immediately? Why are you not leaving a ransom note right there? Everything he does makes every expert say, I've never seen this before. I think the reason you've never seen it before is because he's not okay.
Interesting. So it's evident that you've studied this case extensively.
So not okay. I guess it depends on what your definition of okay is. It's someone that is presumably very okay with ending the life of an old woman. That's what it seems like, right?
And I'm just wondering, do you have a profile in your head of this person? Because you just mentioned that you think this person isn't well, and you referenced his behavior walking up to the door and conducting the crime. Who, in your experience, do you think did this?
I'm not a profiler, but I can tell you as a crime scene investigator, a junior burglar is not going to walk up to an iron door that has another door behind it. That's very difficult to break into. That takes a lot of time. That takes tools. He doesn't take anything out of the backpack that we can see. We know the lights are also damaged on the back of the house near the back door. Maybe that's how he got in. We don't know. But I do know where they exited because I know where Nancy's bleeding, and that's at the front door. I know he tried, to at least take, almost a minute there at the front door. So to me, what you're looking at is somebody that is not a professional, but had a reason, his own reason, to gain entry into that home and do whatever damage he did.
There were no signs of forced entry at the scene, and I'm wondering what that tells you.
So when she says her own reason, is she presuming that it's not connected to the family in any way? Is that what she's implying there?
About how this was conducted.
Well, again, if you go back to the video, when he's doing this the first time, you can see his other hand. He's reaching for the doorknob to test it. Maybe when he was there before, the door was unlocked. Maybe he got rid of the lights, but went into the back door. Maybe it was open. We've heard other people that live in that community that say there's never been an issue and people tend to leave their doors open. Maybe he was testing that first, but I don't know. Again, I didn't see any tools. I didn't see any damage to the front door. We haven't really seen the other doors, but it looked to me like the sliding glass door was intact. And again, if this person was a pro, he would have been in and out. If he was a burglar, why drag her out of bed? Even if he heard her screaming, like, who's there? You know, he could easily just grab her cell phone. There's no way she could call the police and he could get out of there. But her cell phone is behind, her hearing aids are behind, her Apple Watch is behind. It just doesn't sound like somebody that knew what they were doing. He thought about the beginning. How do I gain entry? I don't think he thought about the ending. What do I do if this goes south?
And how often is it that you see cases like these go cold? Because obviously there's not a lot to go off of, it seems like, at the crime scene. Do these cases go cold, and are they ever solved?
Well, you can always have a case go cold, whether it's a kidnapping or a homicide. If this had been my case in the beginning, I would have worked this case like a homicide. If you're wrong, great, you've done no harm. But if you're right, then you've done it correctly from the beginning. So again, if they had believed this was a homicide, they would not have released it. I think they would have brought.
Now, that's something I heard that they criticized Sheriff Nanos for, was that he did treat it like a homicide right away. And I heard other people criticize him for that. But she's saying if he was treating it as a homicide, he wouldn't have opened up the crime scene so soon. And I think she's correct about that. I think, why would you open it up so soon if you think it's a homicide? Doesn't make sense, right? But I specifically remember someone else criticizing Sheriff Nanos, saying, yeah, they shouldn't have treated it as a homicide right away. They should have treated it as a rescue. And maybe that person was former Under Sheriff Castigar. Maybe he's the one that said that.
Brought dogs in quicker. I think they would have brought the FBI in quicker. So in order for a case to be cold, Jackson, you're talking about no more leads, no more witnesses, no more evidence for 3 years. This case is not cold. They are actively waiting on DNA. They are still actively talking to neighbors and the general public. They are still trying to track down maybe who sold him a weapon, maybe who had a weapon stolen. It looks to me like it's a 9mm, but the holster is wrong. It doesn't fit. It's like a one-size-fits-all, real cheap holster. Maybe somebody would remember this kid coming in and buying it. He looks young to me, so I would say 30 or under. Again, just a guess, but it doesn't appear that he's 60. You know what I mean? Like, he seems pretty young. Again, he doesn't seem real experienced, but for whatever reason, he wanted entry into that home. You got to remember, he selected January the 11th and the 24th and the 31st. He did that. So why that house on those days? They're only weekend days. They're only Saturdays and Sundays that we know of. So does that mean he works out of town during the week? Does that mean he's in school during the week? You would hopefully be able to shrink your suspect pool a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point, because he only did the dates that they're referencing were on weekends.
I mean, from what we could tell, we thought that the person was in their 30s or 40s, right? We went over this. That's how old they seem to be to me, in their 30s or 40s. I guess the only thing I don't necessarily agree with this woman with is she seems to think it's more like a random thing. And I don't really think that. I think it's connected somehow.
Which would suggest that he has somewhere to be during the week. It also sounds like you're pointing out a lot of flaws with regard to the investigation tactics, whether it be the FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Office were utilizing. How would you rate their methods of investigation as it pertains to this case?
I don't know everything that they're doing. Obviously, we only know what they've told us so far. But if you watch what's being done, and Jackson, what's not being done, a picture's being painted. One thing I would love to see that I have not seen is
yeah, Kel, the case is certainly not closed. This case is definitely not closed.
Press conference with all three, the sheriff, the FBI, and the family. We have not seen that. I haven't seen the Guthrie family stand with law enforcement at all. They've made their own videos in private without them. I would like to see that, hey, we're a team here. This is a full court press and we are standing together. We're working together. I think it would help people. When you go this long without a press conference, all you're doing is feeding into these conspiracy theories. And that's not fair to anybody. So I would like to see more communication, and I would like it to be as a group.
Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. You've been fantastic.
Jackson, thank you so much. This has been a great time. A lot of
I really believe that antenna that is sticking out of his pocket, I believe to be not a jammer. I believe that to be the walkie-talkie. If he needed a walkie-talkie, that means.
Look at Jen Koffendorfer here on TMZ. But make sure you sonder your way over there to the like button. Likes are free. Sonder your way and subscribe to the channel too. And say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. Great group of people here. Sometimes eccentric, sometimes wild, sometimes angry at me for starting late. You never know what you're going to get in there.
He needed to be able to communicate with somebody.
Look, I know I'm asking you to shotgun it here. How close does it seem that the FBI is to finding the people that did this?
They have too much to do. When I look at what they're doing, it seems to me they don't have somebody pinpointed at all.
Look at that. The dramatic zoom in. The dramatic slow zoom. Maybe I should start doing some of that.
So I'm joined today by former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Koffendorfer. She's here to talk to me today about the Nancy Guthrie case. Jen, we've spoken before. Thank you so much for joining.
And generally speaking, doesn't a British accent just make someone sound 5 to 10 IQ points smarter, whether they are or not? At least if you're an American. It's probably not true when you're on the Great Britain. But in America, I think people think that.
Me again today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So there's been kind of an update over this weekend regarding the case. Savannah Guthrie took to social media and released another statement. And there's something in this statement that sticks out to me and a lot of people. And I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. There's a part of the statement that says, "We hope people search their memories, especially around the key timelines of January 31st and the early morning hours of February 1st, as well as the late evening of January 11th. Now, we're 51 days past since when Nancy Guthrie went missing. And I'm wondering, why would she say January 11th? What could the FBI possibly have on their hands that is drawing attention to that specific date?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, we know at least there's significant source information that is telling us that actually the time frame where video is important, and we've known this from the beginning, has been January 11th. We've known that investigators have specifically asked for that time frame to different neighbors. Why? We know that the porch guy was actually seen on 2 separate occasions. That's what our sources tell us throughout the media environment. And if you look at the way his shoes are, they're different. If you look at the jacket, it's different. He doesn't have a holster. He doesn't have his backpack. And the lighting conditions in terms of the moon seem to be different. So if you look on January 11th, that is a waning crescent as opposed to a full moon, the full illuminescence of the moon that would have been on him and in that community on the night of the abduction. And you can see a difference in terms of the backlighting on Porch Guy. So what I believe is this sort of outlines that Porch Guy would have actually gone there earlier. Did he go there earlier to actually surveil and to prepare, or was he planning on the abduction on that Sunday night and changed his mind? That we don't know, but that date is really significant now.
Right, especially when you consider, last time you were on, you said that a theory of yours was that there were multiple perpetrators that committed this crime. You even went as far as saying that maybe one person entered through the back of the home while Porch Guy was in charge of disabling the cameras from the front. So it stands out to me that it is theorized that it's the same person that we're seeing here on January 11th and not 2 people. Do you still stand by the theory now that multiple people were involved in this abduction?
I do. But before Jen answers, what do you think, chat? Multiple people or just one person? So type 1 to make it simple. Type 1 for one person and type 2 for multiple people involved.
I still stand by the theory, but I agree with you that this perpetrator, the person in charge of the front, is the same perpetrator. I just have an issue with my experience and this sort of a crime being considered by a lone perpetrator. That would be so rare and so outside of the statistics in terms of crimes that I've handled and others have handled that have to do with an abduction. So it doesn't make a lot of sense statistically, and from my own background, I can't make that line up. In addition, I really believe that that antenna that is sticking out of his pocket, I believe to be not a jammer at all. I believe that to be actually a two-way radio, otherwise known as a walkie-talkie. They're the same thing that would have been used. And if he needed a walkie-talkie, that means he needed to be able to communicate with somebody. Also, let's not forget those.
I mean, I can see that being a walkie-talkie. I can see that. I don't really buy the jammer. I don't buy that jammer talk, but that's just me.
Locks that a locksmith was called out to. We see it on video, him futzing with the back door and working on that. And I believe that could have been where entry was made by a secondary perpetrator. Also, keep in mind, this perpetrator used one hand to initially block the camera. He goes back and gets some weeds and kind of, or flowers, waves them around in front of that camera again. At the same time, he's trying the doorknob with his left hand. Did he expect that his partner, if this summation and hypothesis is accurate, was going to open the door? And that's why he is kind of making these actions and these movements.
And it looks like the vast majority of people think multiple people did this, to which I agree. I do think at least two.
I just think that for me, it moves the pendulum to the probability that there was more than one involved. There's a possibility it was just him, but my probability needle has gone over to that side.
We had a former hostage negotiator on yesterday, and he said that he went to the scene and noticed that the blood stopped at the very end of the walkway, right before hitting the pavement or the road, and it signified to him that there was definitely a getaway car waiting for them at the end of that walkway. Now that we have a date, January 11th, do you think the FBI has a higher chance of identifying this getaway car?
Well, now that we have two important dates, and I also thought it was significant that she said the night of the 31st and the morning of the 1st. I don't think that was by accident. In fact, I think this whole statement isn't by accident. I think it is with the support and the encouragement of the FBI that would be behind this to keep heightened this case so that somebody can come forward who recognizes Porch Guy. But to your question, yes, anytime now you have more dates that you have narrowed down and more timelines, now they can compare cars that they might be seeing on the 1st, or I'm sorry, on the 11th, with cars they might have been seeing on the night of the 31st and on the morning of the 1st, which was when this occurred. 147, we know of the camera being disabled. So now you have sort of a trifecta of different dates and times that can be compared and possible vehicles in that time frame to compare.
Like I said before, 51 days since Nancy Guthrie has gone missing. And I'm wondering, in your experience, this late into the case, what strategies could the FBI be utilizing to their advantage right now to generate more leads or maybe catch the people that committed this crime?
Well, the number one thing is looking at this video. The other thing that is just, quite frankly, I'm astonished that they haven't done is do a billboard.
So the detail song bits was a good question. What is the detail that might solve case? I missed that part. To me, the detail was that half crescent oxygen in the blood, which signifies a cough, and the fact that there was a hand. To me, those are the big clues that I think she was talking about. Tell me, chat, if you think it was something else that was big that she was talking about. But those are the two big things that stood out to me.
campaign in the areas that they think are relevant, like they did before, but they don't need a picture of Nancy Guthrie on the billboards. They need a picture of the guy on the porch, the perpetrator. That needs to be splashed in gigantic fashion on billboards in the areas they think might be involved. Also, these billboards need to.
You know what they should do is put that tattoo on a billboard. That would be more beneficial than the actual perp on the porch cam, because I think that tattoo is more revealing. That could potentially be more revealing than the porch cam. What do you think? I mean, you can get a general idea from the porch cam, and someone who knows who it is. There's probably I mean, there should probably be an experiment, right? Have someone dressed up in full gear and see if you can tell who they are, and see how possible that is.
Be in Spanish based on where in the past the FBI chose to put their billboards, which are highly Hispanic portions, especially when they concentrated on Houston, their concentrations in Southern California and in Arizona. When you look at that, it begs the question, do they have answers from any of the DNA? I understand they don't have any answers as to who it is, not that specific, but were they able to find enough markers to just strictly show what nationality? We see this all the time in 23andMe for $100. It's not that they do a deep dive into the DNA profiles, but they do just enough to take a look at possible heritage. I wonder if they've done that and they focused in on possibly being Hispanic.
You know, something that's worth pointing out when, you know, we're talking in regards to CCTV footage. Nancy Guthrie lives in a highly deserted area. I mean, there is not a lot around. So, you know, and I've seen in terms of her proximity to her neighbors, it's pretty far. It's not like you can go over to your.
Now, I will say this: this guy gives a more genuine energy to TMZ. Honestly, if I didn't tell you this was TMZ, would you know it? I wouldn't. So to me, he's got a more authentic and genuine energy than Levin and Garagos. But that's just me. Harvey and Mark.
Your neighbor's house and knock on the door for a cup of sugar within a couple minutes, you would have to walk quite a bit. And so I'm wondering, you know, they could have just taken her out of her home, not been seen by any CCTV, you know, with regards to like Nest or ring doorbells. What about main roads? You know, how deserted is it out there to where a street camera could have picked them up, or a red light camera or anything like that? Could the perpetrators have possibly avoided these cameras, and that's why it's been so hard for the FBI to identify a getaway vehicle?
The answer is absolutely yes. And I've posted a particular route from her house leading clear out to the highway where you don't cross one light, not one. And you're also not on any main thoroughfare except for a very short amount of time. Basically, it's weaving in and out of all these back roads. The only time, and it was, I counted about 3 street lights that were seen in this route. So imagine if you turned off your headlights. Again, it's in the middle of the morning where no one would be on this back roads, or very few people, and you could just meander in and out of these roads. One of the roads is called Roller Coaster Road, interestingly enough. The only thing that is past that I think would definitely have cameras, there was a school that the perpetrator would have to pass, but again, there's no lights or virtually no street lights. So with their headlamps off, they could make it through this route easily, completely undetected, and go the full length to exit the neighborhood and actually get several miles away without detection.
For operating under the assumption that they were casing her house on January 11th, it's likely that they did plan this route where they wouldn't be seen by cameras. And if that's so, then what could the FBI possibly do to track these people if their car wasn't seen by a camera or anything like that?
I've said this from the beginning, they have to concentrate on
Great question by him. I like this question. So, what do they have to concentrate on, Jen?
the choke points, because even if they took one of these circuitous routes, at some point there is a choke point with the highway or with a major point of egress. And when that happens, I would be doing geofencing at these particular points of egress and looking at the cellular activity between the time frame of about 2:30 and 2:45, maybe 3 o'clock, just to make sure I got everything in case they slowed down or were driving particularly.
The choke point of this channel is the like button. Like the video. Saunder your way to the like button. Leave your DNA on the like button. Shadow the Night Owl is not doing too well with only 213 likes here. For how many people are in the chat? Over 1,000? That's pretty poor. Shadow needs his Hootie snacks. He's getting a little, he doesn't need to be on this much of a diet, you know. But come in and say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Great group of people. And becoming a member gives you access to the members only live streams. So check those out too.
Slow. But nevertheless, that's what needs to happen. There's choke points no matter what route they took that they would have to pass. So I would be looking at geofencing each of those choke points on the 11th, as well as the 31st and the 1st in that early morning time frame, to see if I can find a vehicle or a cell phone that match up, that triangulate at that time.
How would you identify a cell phone that belonged to the perpetrator?
Well, when you geofence, particularly if you're looking at that time frame, the amount of vehicles on the road are going to be almost none. You wouldn't expect to see people out at that hour between 2:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the morning. It's a ghost town, especially in a town that's a ghost town already, as you pointed out. There's very little activity. And so now you can geofence these choke points in an area where very few cars are. So if just say there's 2 or 3 cell phones that show up at that time frame within those hours, maybe it'll be a few more, but you can really narrow it down. And that's what I'm hoping will catch this perpetrator, is geofence at the choke points, because at some point you would think there would be a cell phone, even if they went to the location using handhelds. How long did they utilize handhelds? Because the further you get away, certainly.
How hopeful are you for that, chat? The choke holds, geofencing, the choke points, using cell phones. I mean, that might be all they have left, honestly. Besides, if they can get that handprint that the other crime expert was talking about. But maybe this is all they have left, is trying to geofence down to the cell phones and those choke points. Maybe that's it. But it just seems like a long shot to me. But what do you think, chat?
From each other, you wouldn't be able to utilize them. Did they change over to cell phone? That's what you're hoping for. If they're super sophisticated, though, and never brought cell phones, never used cell phones, obviously geofencing also will not work.
Now, there has been an overarching theory that these kidnappers took her to Mexico. And I'm wondering, if you do successfully geofence and you identify a phone that belongs to the kidnapper, does the FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Office run into a roadblock in terms of jurisdiction if they did indeed cross over the Mexican border with Nancy Guthrie?
So this is how it works with international cases. The Bureau.
And this is a good question too. How does it work if they went down to Mexico? Is there any red tape that gets in the way? This guy's asking some good questions here.
Bureau would be the only one that would be handling that part. Locals don't have that liaison. The FBI has legal attaches that are located in Mexico, basically liaison entities that speak with the federales there, the national police, and so on, and handle and troubleshoot and work with cases just like this. Now, this is the problem. Mexican police forces are well known as being very corrupt. Plus, right now, the relationship between the United States and Mexico is quite fatigued, as you can imagine, with the new border policies and also just the real crackdown on the cartels and, you know, the cooperation, if you will, in making sure cartel members were otherwise alleviated from being in their posts, everything that's been happening there. And typically, the federal authorities have issues with corruption. That is very well known. They are very much on the take. If this is a fringe, of a cartel, a fringe member of a cartel that actually decided to go in and do this, because I really don't believe this would be done as a cartel hit per se. It's too dangerous. There's so much more low hanging fruit in Mexico that they're very successful with doing kidnaps and getting ransoms and then releasing the people. It's one of the businesses of the cartels. But that's on that side of the border. I don't think under these conditions they would normally head in. That doesn't mean that a French couldn't have come across the border and done this, that has the ability to go back and forth. In other words, they're a US citizen or otherwise somehow naturalized or have a green card. But it's a huge roadblock. However, there was a case in about 2019, as I recall, where a businessman was abducted in Tucson. He was put in a trunk and abducted by cartel members. Again, 2019, a long time ago compared to how things are now. Driven back across the border into Mexico, and the federal authorities in Mexico worked side by side with the FBI. That those individuals, and there was more than one that was involved in the abduction, were arrested, are serving time, and moreover, the victim was saved. So they can work together, especially on cases like this that don't have to do with drug trafficking and other things.
If you were the special agent in charge right now at the FBI Phoenix field office, especially with all of the ongoing tensions with Iran and the conflict over there, how are you delegating assets to solving this case? I mean, where is your focus at this point?
Such a great question. And it's a difficult question because of this. Look, the president of the United States has asked for full assets of the FBI to be used in conjunction with solving this case, right? He has designated that. Kash Patel has talked about that. So in large part, as the SAC who answers to the director of the FBI, you're going to have to pass everything by Kash Patel. Normally you wouldn't. Normally that's all delegated down. But now you're going to have to make sure that your decision lines up with what Kash Patel wants. And Kash Patel has President Trump to answer to. So this is much more complicated than it normally would be if I were to be the SAC. If I were the SAC, I would take that violent crime task force that well knows how to conduct violent crime investigations. I would actually cherry pick the most.
As per usual, I must call out all flying monkeys as I see them. Jojo, the flying monkey, says we should keep talking about it because Jared has no flaws and has never made any mistakes in his life. Ah, I'm glad you've noticed that I'm a perfect human being. Jared is a perfect human being. Only JLR with his frivolous lawsuits is bad. If only everyone could think as Jojo thinks. But say hello to a flying monkey. This is what they'll do. Be antagonistic, condescending, belittling, defend and enable alleged abusers, and try to make someone who speaks the truth seem ridiculous. When you see flying monkeys, you call them out. Shine a light on them. They die in the light of exposure. But when you don't speak up, it enables abuse and bad things to happen. The end.
Experienced kidnapping special agents within the United States, and I would ask for them to be detailed down to Phoenix, 2 or 3 of them at least, And I would have had, but this is from the beginning, I would have had them running this operation. And maybe that is a Phoenix agent. I don't know. But I would literally take the most experienced FBI agents that's handled multiple kidnappings and put them down there. And that's going to be an old seasoned vet, because I can tell you kidnappings like this just don't happen.
People have punched me in the face when I was an addict multiple times, by the way, and I didn't even get to hit them back. And no, being a domestic abuser for 3 years, strangling your girlfriend allegedly 24 times, threatening to kill her, is not in anywhere near the same. So go fuck yourself.
Rental kidnappings, they happen all the time. Kidnappings between gang members and cartels.
Whenever you see JoJo, understand he's defending abuse and trying to minimize abuse by trying to make it seem like other people are guilty. I have no tolerance for that. He is a piece of shit. He's enabling abuse and defending abuse. Anyone who does that is a flying monkey piece of shit.
They don't get paid enough for their dope, or they get ripped off, or they, get angry. That happens all the time. But these types of kidnappings are so rare. I would want the best of the best I could in charge of this investigation. And that's what I would ask. And then I would ask for a team of about 10, and I'd want analysts throughout the entire country working on this to review video.
Interesting. Now, it seems like the FBI in this case is kind of holding their cards close to their chest. We don't really know at what point they're at in their investigation, or at what point they're going to come so close to finding her that they will go public with what they found. Look, I know I'm asking you to shotgun it here, but how close does it seem to you that the FBI is to finding the people that did this?
Unfortunately, I think, and it's not because the case is cold, they have too much to do. All that video, the DNA issues, the interviews, they're recanvassing. But when I look at what they're doing, which is a lot of recanvassing, it's having the family reach back out and ask for help. When I look at all of that, it seems to me they don't have somebody pinpointed at all.
So, folks, remember, JoJo is certainly an abusive person. I guarantee he's an abuser. You should probably check his wife and girlfriend if he's married. He probably abuses them, if not worse. So JoJo Wilson, keep your eyes open for that. He's probably an abuser. Thank you for becoming a member, Lee.
It seems like they are still confused. So that is the best I can glean from what I am seeing action-wise. And it's really disconcerting to all of us. Does that mean that perhaps they're just keeping their cards so close, and actually, like with Brian Koberger, they're ready to pounce? They're just putting everything together.
So now JoJo is banned. I've had enough. But I seriously do have no patience for people that want to defend and enable abusers. I have no patience for that. People that want to try to make everyone else seem guilty. It's the same thing narcissistic people do, right? Like, oh, everyone has some narcissistic traits. Why are you calling out narcissism? Everyone has some traits. It's like, no, what are you trying to do? You're trying to minimize how bad narcissistic people are, and you're trying to make it seem like everyone's guilty. I know all the tactics. I have no patience for it anymore. So they will be ridiculed, called out mercilessly.
Could be. But look at how this case was handled. Anytime they had any information about an individual that might have been involved, they pounced. They didn't wait for a grand jury.
And Kelly, thank you for becoming a member, Kelly. You now have access also to the members only live streams. I'll put Lee up here too. Here we are. And Lee, thank you, Lee, again. I appreciate you both for becoming members. Awesome of you to support the channel.
Wrote down a criminal complaint, which is another way to charge, and they immediately got assets together like the hostage rescue team, SWAT teams, and they descended upon 2 different possible people who were involved in this. Now, it didn't ferret out, but they didn't wait around, and I'm not seeing that here. So when you look, I think that that is going to be the approach they have whenever they do have it, because at the end of the day, no one knows Nancy is not with us. There's no information that she is and no information that she isn't. So it's still a life and death situation. And you have at least one perpetrator that is extremely dangerous, that could strike again, that entered that house to take an 84-year-old woman, well knowing it's very.
I don't necessarily think the person's going to strike again. I think it was a targeted thing, and they'll probably lay low. Now, the last thing about abusing people is, I mean, yeah, just because there are other abusive people out there too, that's still not an excuse for someone abusing people, right? I mean, okay, there's tons of abusive people that are narcissistically abusing people, using domestic violence. It doesn't make it good. Doesn't make it okay. Doesn't make it excusable just because people are doing it. I mean, what is the argument there? The argument's just to minimize and to share the blame, to spread the blame around like butter on toast.
Very unlikely she would make it out alive.
Jen Coffindaffer, you are a badass. You are great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Anything you'd like to promote?
Oh, well, would love for people to join me on X, Twitter, at Coffindaffer FBI. I do updates on this case and many other cases throughout the day and throughout the week. And then also, I do have my own show. It's Break the Case with Jen Coffindaffer, and it's on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And then, of course, I'm on News Nation. I hope you can join.
Check out Jen Coffindaffer's channel. We've been watching her. See, what was good about that interview is that guy keeps her on point. When she's on her own live stream, she can kind of go off on some tangents, but she's a great guest on a show. And I don't use this as an insult against her. It's just, I think when it's more targeted and it's answering just like pinpointed questions, I think that's where she shines. I think she does very good with that. But that's just me. But while you're here, chat, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Sonder your way over to the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And say hello to the flock of black sheep.
Hey, everybody. I'm Ashley Banfield. This is Drop Dead Serious. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you also for subscribing. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, this is the thing right there, the little guy, and it's easy and it's fun and it's free and it's cute and it doesn't cost you a penny, and then you're subscribed and I get you all the information you need and you never miss an episode. And if you're a member, that's the join thing down there. Thank you as well for being a member. I appreciate it. I have a video coming out for you very soon, by the way. So I have more information on day 52 of Nancy Guthrie having vanished, and this investigation, which feels very, very stalled. But I've been talking to multiple sources, folks, and I have a little bit more information that I did not know before that changes a few things. I have been mystified.
That's a great question by Eva here. We're going to pull it on the screen. Jared, do you think or do you feel abusive people were abused themselves like a vicious cycle? I think here's the thing. As Dr. Salerno and I talk about all the time, there's the startup material for narcissism, etc. Then you have the startup material, people can turn into narcissists and be abusive. But abuse is not a trauma response, right? People who are traumatized don't always become abusers. Why is that? Because there's a genetic component that's different. There's plenty of people that have CPTSD that were abused themselves, but don't become abusers. Why? Because becoming an abuser is not a trauma response. Now, a lot of people have muddied the waters when they've said narcissism is just a trauma response, but it's not. It's not just a trauma response. Now, to make it confusing, narcissists, they have been abused too sometimes. Not all the time, but they definitely can be abused. But their narcissism and abusive behavior is not a symptom of that trauma, if that makes sense. And again, this is what Dr. Salerno and I go over all the time. But it's a good question, Eva. I'm glad you brought it up.
by what happened inside the house, right? We know that this crime happened sometime likely between 1:47 a.m. and 2:28 a.m. on February the 1st, Sunday. And as Sheriff Nanos explained, Nancy Guthrie had come home, put her garage door down, and presumably went to bed, as we probably all would do around that time. So this perpetrator likely got her out of her bed because Savannah Guthrie said, my mother disappeared, from her bed in the dark of night. So I've been wondering, was there a struggle? Was there something that happened in the bedroom? Was there a struggle out in the family room? Was there a struggle out in the front hall? The kitchen? Where did this crime take place? However long this scumbag was in her home. Filthy scumbag infiltrating this innocent woman's home. Where did the crimes happen? Like, what happened in the home? And I have come to learn, I think you probably, if you follow me regularly, and thank you, that my source told me on day 3 that there was blood found inside the home. Okay.
And yes, Tina, I do think there's a large genetic component of narcissism. Now, it's not the only part, but I think there's a startup material is necessary to become a narcissist. I do think that. But the genes and the environment, they interact with one another. But I think they need that gene material to truly become that abusive person.
Second source of mine confirmed definitely blood inside the home. And that second source went further and told me that the deputies who'd arrived, who thought they were looking for a missing woman, maybe she wandered, an elderly woman.
CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Didn't show up for her church event, and her family has called us. When the more skilled investigators arrived, they saw evidence that indicated they needed to call in a more skilled and experienced team like the homicide investigators, right? They saw, according to my source, the back door was wide open. My first source had told me that the back door was wide open. My second source told me back door's wide open. My episode yesterday, if you haven't seen it, told you which door we think it may have been based on many data points that I have sort of amassed, and that she regularly left her back doors, plural, unlocked. There's a back door that goes into like a storage unit or storage part or a shed part of the house that could be part of the garage, but it doesn't look like it's part of the house proper.
So, Inspector, the key traits of narcissism: grandiosity, covert or overt; antagonism, covert or overt; impaired empathy. And what they're doing is investing in a false self at the expense of an authentic self. And as Dr. Salerno says, it's not as much to do about self-love or self-loathing. It's at the investment in that image. That's what they're invested in. That's where the grandiosity comes from. But by the way, folks, super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. And becoming a channel member gives you access to the members-only live streams. Look at this, back door of Nancy Guthrie's home here. I don't think I've ever seen this angle up close like this. Interesting.
And then there is a back door that is right smack dab kind of in the middle of the house that goes into the back patio. And it is visible from the front door. If you come in the front door, you can kind of see that back door out to the back patio is right there. And if it's open, you can see it. And we were told there was blood in the house, but I could never find out where. Where did those investigators see it so that they knew there was something so dire that they had to bring in homicide investigators? And now I know. Now I know where the blood is inside the house. And it is a fascinating piece of data because it is right in the front entrance of the home. Front entrance, front hallway, whatever you want to call that front entrance. We don't have a perfect photograph of the inside of Nancy Guthrie's front entrance. We have a good photograph of what's off to the left, and it is a living room. As you look off to the left, there's a nice living room and a window behind you there and a fireplace and another window and a sliding glass door at the end. But if you're standing at the front entrance, you're looking to the left down the living room, and you're looking pretty much straight ahead to the sort of family room area with a fireplace and a nice big long window out the back of the home. And then off to the left of that, a door that is more than likely the door that the investigators saw open, because that's what you would see. Could you also see the sliders open way down the left in the living room? If those doors were left open, my source said back doors were routinely left open, not side sliders. There are two sliders that exist on the side of the house, right? You walk in the front door, look all the way down to the left. There's a sliding glass door out to a little patio. And then there's another sliding glass door that goes into another room, presumably the master bedroom, maybe Nancy Guthrie's bedroom. And if you're confused at all between the difference between open and unlocked, let me explain. The investigators saw a door, a back door, wide open. That's the reporting I got. Not just unlocked, wide open. And the Guthrie kids told the police that Mrs. Guthrie routinely left her back doors unlocked. So those are the difference between unlocked and wide open. As far as sliding glass doors go, they are towards the side of the house. And I was told back door wide open, and back doors, plural, routinely left unlocked. I don't know about the sliding glass doors on the.
So if sliding glass doors or back doors are routinely left unlocked, that would mean to me very likely more than one person, and someone came in through the back. Well, maybe someone distracted at the front. Maybe. Or maybe the person that was in the front walked around to the back. We don't know. But either one of those wouldn't surprise me. But yes, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for Shadow the Night Owl's Hootie Snacks. Shadow the Night Owl is my spirit animal on the channel. And say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I probably should be able to get to 40,000 in this video.
Side of the house, way off to the left as you walk in the front door. I'm not sure if those were unlocked as well. Did this perpetrator get in through those? Maybe, possibly. I don't know. But the blood now in the front entrance of the home is a significant detail about this crime. Just in the front entrance, not in the bedroom, not in the kitchen, not in the living room, not in that family. About the sliding glass doors on the side of the house, way off to the left as you walk in the front door. I'm not sure if those were unlocked as well. Did this perpetrator get in through those? Maybe, possibly. I don't know. But the blood now in the front entrance of the home is a significant detail about this crime. Just in the front entrance.
I think we knew this, didn't we? I think Ashley had said this before, that she had said there was similar blood in the front door, right? Didn't we hear this before?
Not in the bedroom, not in the kitchen, not in the living room.
So this is the part we didn't hear. We didn't hear that it wasn't in the bedroom, wasn't in the kitchen, right? Okay. So this is the new part.
Not in that family room. The front entrance has a pattern of blood that is the same as it is outside, and it goes over the threshold out the door. So imagine, if you will, standing in the front entrance of someone's home, and there's blood dripping, and you're walking out the door, and that blood dripping continues in the same pattern out to now the front entrance outside the home, and the pathway that goes down the front walk towards the driveway. First, though, quick note from my sponsors. Being on camera a lot means that having the right kind of makeup to keep my skin happy is very, very important to me. And I think it is to you as well, because I have always hated it when makeup feels cakey and heavy. But today's sponsor, Jones Road Beauty, oh, they get it. Where you heard about them. So that's where that blood is, in the front entrance of Nancy Guthrie's home. If you were to walk through the front door and say hello, that's where the blood pattern is. And so I wondered, well, then what happened there? You know, what happened? And I have reached out to somebody who is really good at this and a lot better than I am, Dr. Peter Valentin. And
I think a lot of this is from Ashley's source. Ashley's mystery source in law enforcement, by the way. I don't know if it's the same source Brian Etten has, but there's someone. And who could be the sources? I mean, Sergeant Cross. Sergeant Cross could be a source. He still works there. Now, he's not a detective, but Sergeant Cross, I'm sure, knows the detectives. And I'm sure both of them, because Ashley and Brian both know Sergeant Cross, and they probably said to him, hey, can you put me in touch with some of the detectives so we can get like an ear to the ground here on what they're saying? I'm sure that's happened. Now, I'm also sure that person's not going to want their identity revealed. That's true too.
I'm so glad that he joined me on this, because I really needed someone to sort of tell me not only about this new information about where the blood now is, crossing over the threshold of that front door, but also the shape of all the blood drops and the verticalness of them. And that thing that everybody thinks is a expiration pattern. And he's so much better at this than me and a whole bunch of folks on the internet, because he's got other theories about that expiration-like stain. Don't get too caught up on it being an expiring kind of stain. He's an associate professor. He's got a long title, so I have to read it. Sorry. Dr. Peter Valentin is an associate professor and a department chair of the forensic science at University of New Haven. He's testified in 7 states. He's also testified in federal court as a blood stain, blood spatter expert. He's also a forensics expert. So not just blood pattern, but he's very, very good with the blood patterns. And so I asked him a lot about what this new information tells us, and also to give me his, expertise on the blood pictures that we've seen outside. He's got a lot to say. Don't go anywhere. You have to hear this, because it's not what I thought. A lot of it is not what I thought. Like, I've had to rejig my thinking about what might have happened to Mrs. Guthrie based on what Dr. Valentin has said. Also, just a few things in the news today regarding who, Sheriff Nanos. He seems to make all the news, don't he? So he's given a new interview, not to us. Nope. Those news conference ended months ago, and now he just cherry picks. So this is a new interview that he's given with News 4 Tucson, and Fox News has released this. And he's defending his department's handling of the investigation. Look, he read a lot of his press because he knew exactly stuff that Brian Etten had reported. He went head to head with a lot of us, right? He knew a lot of stuff that I reported. Boy, did he ever chew me out. Not by name, but it was when I broke all that news on day 3 that he got real mad. And actually,
yes, we all know Sheriff Nanos was really talking about Ashley Banfield when he was contradicting her about maybe Tommaso being the prime suspect. Yeah, we all know that. That was Sheriff Nanos's attempt to make Ashley Banfield look ridiculous. That was an attempt to smear her in her journalistic, or I guess we'll call this reporting credibility, right? That was pretty obnoxious of Sheriff Nanos to do.
Took it out on his department too, who all said that he just tightened the noose around them as soon as I had reported from my sources. So he told News 4 Tucson that he has no regrets about decisions that he made early on, even as this case remains unsolved. Can I quote him? Here we go. Look, I have no regrets about my team and their efforts. I don't regret we let the crime scene go too soon or any of that. Do what now? Because I distinctly remember, like on day, 20 or maybe 14 or somewhere along the line, somebody asked you if you let the scene go too soon, sir, and this was your answer.
Monday morning quarterback, I probably would have, but I'll say this. We processed the scene. We got what we thought was complete. My team did that. I have to have all the faith and trust in their abilities and their skills, and I think they went through that pretty well. But because another agency now steps in and wants to assist, we're just like with you, we're an open book. Absolutely. How can we help? One of the things people don't see, I heard your question about, we left and then others could walk up. When we process a scene and we're done, we return that scene to in this case, the homeowners, the family. And we don't just go march back in there. We call the family again and get permissions to go back to the home.
Mike, thank you very much for the super chat, sir. Front porch blood staged, Nancy was taken out back. I mean, it's possible. That would have been clever of them to do that, right? And then to make sure there's no blood throughout the back door. That would be clever. That'd be clever and would certainly trick them a little bit. Now, did that happen? I don't know. Interesting. But thank you very much for the super chat, Mike.
So, yeah, there's, again, Monday morning quarterback, absolutely. I probably could have held off on that.
So you did have regrets. You did admit that you let the scene go too soon and said, mea culpa, that's on me, whatever. So now why are you saying no regrets? Nope. I don't regret that we let the crime scene go too soon. Did you forget that you did regret it at one point? Like, what made you unregret it? I don't know. Okay. So then when asked, this was a good one. When asked what he would say to the person or people behind Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, Sheriff Nanos decided to say this. It's like a direct appeal. You ready? Quote, just give her up. Let her go. Take her to a clinic, a hospital. Drop her off. Just let her go. End quote. So I guess Sheriff Nanos believes that Mrs. Guthrie is still alive because it's just let her go. Take her to a clinic. Drop her off. Even Savannah Guthrie has issued a different tone, right? In her last statement, she said, we just want her home so that we can give her a place of final rest. I'm paraphrasing, but effectively, Savannah seemed to indicate that a place of final rest meant we want her home so we can celebrate a funeral of some kind or a memorial of some kind. And so to hear Sheriff Nanos say this, here's what I would say. And listen, what am I? But I've seen a few sheriffs do their thing. And I would say, motherfucker, we are going to find you.
Ashley Banfield ripping. Sounds like me ripping a flying monkey. I mean, I don't think Brian Etten's making it about himself. I think he's pretty genuine in the case. I think Sheriff Nanos makes it about himself. Ashley Banfield, she can be a little hyperbolic sometimes, but, for the most part, I think she does some good work.
You can run, but you can't hide. But we are going to find you, and we will tear you limb from limb, so to speak, in our system of jurisprudence in America. We will fuck with you when we find you. So yeah, live your life looking over your shoulder, because we will find you, and we will absolutely bring the full force of Pima County and Arizona and the federal government down on your sorry, stinking ass. That's the thing that I would say. Not please drop her off, let her go, take her to a clinic. Again, that's just me. But I'm not so sure that this is the thing that you want to say to the perp. I don't think he's going to do it. I don't know. Call me nuts. It's day 52. So then something else happened today. And that was that there was a hearing. Pima County Board of Supervisors held a meeting, and it's kind of like an airing of the grievances, Festivus for the rest of us. And a lot of people showed up. There were some issues that are unrelated to Nancy.
A Seinfeld reference, Festivus for the rest of us. You want to hear Ashley ripping the guys a new one again? We may as well. I actually, for a change, I'll agree with living.
Off. Even Savannah Guthrie has issued a different tone, right? In her last statement, she said, we just want her home so that we can give her a place of final rest. I'm paraphrasing, but effectively, Savannah seemed to indicate that a place of final rest meant we want her home so we can celebrate a funeral of some kind or a memorial of some kind. And so to hear Sheriff Nanos say this, here's what I would say. And listen, what am I? But I've seen a few sheriffs do their thing, and I would say
So she's saying this is what the sheriff should say. I think Savannah's thinking you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. But then I would also say to Savannah, but don't forget, shit collects the most flies of all.
motherfucker, we are going to find you. You can run, but you can't hide. But we are going to find you, and we will tear you limb from limb, so to speak, in our system of jurisprudence in America. We will fuck with you when we find you. So yeah, live your life looking over your shoulder, because we will find you, and we will absolutely bring the full force of Pima County and Arizona and the federal government down on your sorry, stinking ass. That's the thing that I would say. Not please drop her off, let her go, take her to a clinic. Again, that's just me. But I'm not so sure that this is the thing that you want to say to the perp. I don't think he's going to do it. I don't know. Call me nuts. It's day 52. So then something else happened today. And that was that there was a hearing. Pima County Board of Supervisors held a meeting, and it's kind of like an airing of the grievances, Festivus for the rest of us. And a lot of people showed up. There were some issues that are unrelated to Nancy Guthrie that certainly happened at this meeting, but also there were some people who had some things to say about Sheriff Nanos. There were official people who came and spoke their piece, get him the hell out of there, so to speak. There's a recall effort, and there were citizens as well. I want you to hear from some of the folks who stood up and said what they wanted to say about Sheriff Chris Nanos, especially in light of the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Have a look.
Chris Nanos is an international embarrassment at this point. Now, I know that you guys didn't hire him. We elected him, unfortunately.
I'm Sergeant Aaron Cross, president of the Pima County Deputies organization. As many know, a reporter recently uncovered the long hidden, terrible record of Sheriff Chris Nanos from his time as an El Paso police officer. This includes purportedly beating a handcuffed suspect in the head with a flashlight, for which he was suspended and nearly indicted.
I mean, that's assault with a deadly weapon. And imagine if someone did that to a cop. They would get that guy for attempted murder. And instead, if you're a member of law enforcement named Sheriff Nanos, you can do that and get a civil suit against your department, and you can still become sheriff. This is why they say, folks, if you're not mad, you're not paying attention. Because pay attention, there will be plenty of things to be mad about. There's plenty of injustices out there if you only open your eyes to them.
This record, if properly disclosed, would have likely prevented him from being hired or from becoming a peace officer in the state of Arizona. For over 40 years, this has been concealed from the department and the voters of Pima County. Because of this scandal, our organization, the largest union of deputies in Pima County, has taken a vote. We asked our members a clear question: confidence in Sheriff Nanos to continue in office, or no confidence, and a call for his resignation. The verdict was unanimous: no confidence. He has lost the faith of his deputies and the community. His past renders him unfit to wear the badge. That he has concealed it for 40 years does not make the concealment right. It makes the fraud of the badge his deputies and the community. His past renders him unfit to wear the badge. That he has concealed it for 40 years does not make the concealment right. It makes the fraud greater. The 300 deputies I represent speak with one voice. Chris Nanos must show the integrity he once swore to uphold. He must show the dignity that the office requires. He must resign. If he will not, then I ask this board charged with oversight.
And again, maybe the chat and the viewers don't like buying hootie snacks for Shadow the Night Owl. Maybe they'd rather support him getting Narcan from the Richens. She did try to kill Shadow the Night Owl with fentanyl, and we needed Narcan to revive him. Likes equal Narcan. Maybe that will get the people to like, because Corey Richens' evil twin sister frickin' tried to spike Shadow the Night Owl's hootie snacks with fentanyl. She wanted to get his life insurance policy, and then she wanted to write a book about how to save Shadow the Night Owl. We can't let her get away with it. So like the video.
To exercise every authority vested in you. The power of this board should be used, not for comfort, but for accountability. There are moments in the life of a community when those entrusted with authority must stand firm against those who abuse it. This is such a moment. We ask that this board have the courage to support Supervisor Hines' item. Pima County and the nation is watching. Thank you.
I'm here to ask that the entirety of this board support the measure to hold accountable, open an investigation, and to call to question by legal means, in fact, that Sheriff Nanos lied under oath in a sworn deposition about his previous work history and subsequent discipline thereof, which is misrepresentation of office.
So there you have it. Don't know how the recall is going to go. It's going to be tricky. You need a lot of signatures, but Board of Supervisors sure has a lot to process after today. So let me get you to the meat of the reporting that I got today, that my sources got, and that is that the blood continues inside the house at that front entrance, inside the front entrance, not just outside the front entrance of her home, over the threshold of her front door and into the front entrance of Nancy Guthrie's home, and what that story might tell us, but also what the blood drops that we can see, which both Michael Ruiz and Brian Enton, Michael Ruiz from Fox Digital and Brian Enton from News Nation, were able to videotape with their own eyes. You know, I think 38, 48 hours after the crime scene was just let go, right? And actually, crime scene was let go 30 hours or so after the disappearance. By the time that Brian Enton and Michael Ruiz were able to videotape, I think it was like Tuesday. So, 2 to 3 days after Mrs. Guthrie disappeared and the crime scene was released, the reporters were able to at least witness the blood pattern, the blood spatter pattern at the front door, but we don't see it inside the house. So I spoke to Dr. Peter Valentin, again, of the University of New Haven, who's an expert in blood spatter, about what the blood tells us that he can see and what the information tells us that my source has told us about the blood inside and what it tells us about the crime. And what he has to say is fascinating. Dr. Valentin, what do you make of, first of all, just the overarching information that we've learned, and that is that the blood droplet pattern that we've all seen outside Nancy's front door continues over the threshold and inside her front entrance, but that's it, that's it for blood spatter, for blood droplets, for blood evidence in this crime scene?
So what's interesting about those blood droplets is that they're what we refer to in blood stain pattern analysis as drip stains. And drip stains are probably the most common stains that we see, and they are what they sound like.
Drip stains. I mean, this is the first I've heard this term too. And this is day 52.
They're blood dropping from an object and landing on a surface, and they have no energy associated with them. It's simply gravity pulling blood down and blood falling onto a surface. And notice I didn't say it means that somebody's bleeding, although very often that is what's happening. What could be happening here is that, and we're all assuming that is Nancy Guthrie's blood.
No, we know that.
Yeah.
We do know that. The sheriff confirmed it's hers.
Okay, right. Because otherwise we'd be doing forensic genetic genealogy on that unknown blood. But what it means is that an object, most likely Nancy Guthrie, is the source of blood outside the threshold, right? So outside the door. But where it stops can mean one of two or even more things. One is that she is put into a vehicle. It is she or somebody sees that she's bleeding and then stops it, right? Puts a towel, puts a hand, does something to stop the bleeding. The other thing it can be is that she is repositioned. And the repositioning changes the blood flow.
Well, that would be really critical if we had a continuation, but we don't. My sources tell me that what you see is what you get, except for the stuff inside that I broke, in this podcast. And that is that the blood droplets go down the outside entrance of Nancy's home and down the path and stop. No gap and then restart. So it just seems logical that that's where a car could easily park and that's where she could have been taken away.
Yes. And so now I was a detective with the Connecticut State Police in addition to being a forensic scientist. So here's where I get to combine those two skill sets. And so imagine what I just told you, that, you know, we have the repositioning of the source of the blood, right? So we'll assume for a moment it's Nancy's, maybe it's her chin, maybe it's her arm, wherever it happens to be. And then, you know, along with that, you have a waiting vehicle, right? So the blood stops because there's a repositioning. And then why doesn't the pattern continue? Because she's put into a vehicle, which is certainly what makes sense given the location. Now, investigatively, you know, what do I want to do with that information? Of course, there's been a tremendous amount of investigative effort put into finding the vehicles that were in the location that night, and of course, as it should be. Now, what do I care about as a forensic, you know, scientist, a bloodstain pattern, you know, expert, and really, as a forensic scientist, trying to find traces of blood. There's blood in that vehicle. Even when you know that you're trying to clean an area to remove blood, it is exceedingly difficult because most people, when they clean a place where they think blood is, they only clean until the color red is gone. But the chemical components of blood stay there. And we have a whole, you know, cache of reagents that are called latent development reagents. And what they're specifically meant to do is help us find blood that we otherwise can't see. So in the event that a vehicle...
And this is a big one here, right? Just because the red is gone doesn't mean the blood is completely gone. And do you think local law enforcement knew about this? An honest question. Do you think they did? Do you think that before they opened up the scene, they knew, oh yes, there's blood that you just can't see? Even when the red's gone, there's still blood. I don't know. I just get the impression they probably didn't. I bet you the FBI would have, but they didn't have time. They didn't get a chance to open up, to have the crime scene before it was opened up, and the evidence could have been contaminated by then. But what do you think, chat? Do you think local law enforcement knew enough to do what he's talking about? You would hope so, right?
Is recovered that is believed to be the vehicle that transported Nancy from that house. The first thing that we'd be doing or should be doing is looking for that latent blood, because I'd highly doubt that it would be visible at this point in time, because it's the critical piece of information that puts that vehicle at the house at the time that she's bleeding, because blood doesn't stay liquid for very long.
And we so hope that we'll get there. But I mean, we're starting to feel as though we may.
Ashley said that, and the other person said that today, not on there, Mace, but on the, between Brian Etten, TMZ, and this, Unlocked. Ashley Banfield said it.
We may not get to a vehicle. Let me just go back to the source of the bleeding, because this is what's new to this. This is new to me, and I believe it's new to everybody. I haven't seen anybody else report it, and my source gave me this information, that the bleeding begins inside the house, not outside the house. This is not something that happened at the door. The bleeding didn't begin at the back, at the front door outside. It began inside. And I had imagined that anyway, because a source had told me there was blood found inside. We just couldn't tell where. Mm-hmm. We know she was in her bed because Savannah has said she was taken from her bed in the dark of night. Those are her words, taken from her bed in the dark of night. So you would assume then perhaps there'd be some kind of a struggle in the bedroom where she would see for the first time this intruder. But my source says that is not where blood is found. Blood is only found inside the home, at the front door, inside that front hallway. It's where the dripping begins, and it continues over that threshold. So if you're that Connecticut state cop again, what are you imagining happened inside that house?
Okay, so this is great information, and finding blood on the inside of the threshold doesn't mean she wasn't first attacked in the bedroom. I think everybody can remember a time that they were injured when it took some period of time for blood to accumulate for it to begin dripping. And a common mistake a lot of investigators make is they hyper focus on the place where they first see the blood, and they think this is where the attack occurred. And that is almost, I wouldn't say almost always incorrect, because in shooting scenes, you can have the immediate production of blood where it does fall, or you get spatter stains where it memorializes where the shooting occurred. But not even in shooting scenes all the time. You can have somebody wearing a winter coat or a shirt, and if that bullet enters and exits that person, what's first going to happen? The blood is going to soak into the clothing before it then begins to drip or then otherwise present itself outside of that. So finding the blood in one room doesn't mean that that's the room where the attack occurred or the incident occurred. You have to go back and you need to look for other potential.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with that.
Items or artifacts to give you indications of what might have happened. Now, what you can do is you can look at the type of bloodstains potentially, and then look for other sources of evidence and put those two together to say, do the bloodstains and the artifacts within the space help me understand what happened, and therefore are the bloodstains suggestive of the event happening in this space? I know I'm being a little cagey about what we have here.
But I'm fascinated with, everything that you're saying. The droplets are vertical and they're undisturbed. And my source tells me that inside, as you go in through the front door and you now are standing in the front entrance of the home and the blood is there, they are identical. They are droplets that are undisturbed. There's no sign of struggle in them. There's no footprints in them. They are just quite literally a trail of blood droplets that goes from the front hall over the threshold of the front door, down that front walk, and disappear. But I get very confused about how that could have happened if she were walking, say at gunpoint, because theoretically the gun would have to be behind her to be moving her along, not dragging her along, from behind, right? Or carried. But I mean, take your investigative lens and tell me what you think about an undisturbed trail of vertical blood droplets like that. And then we'll get to that one spot that doesn't look like a trail of vertical. It looks like an expiration zone. So start inside and then tell me what are the options here for an investigator to imagine how she was taken out of that home.
Okay, so there's a few things there. We might need to slow this down because I actually do see some disturbance in the blood droplets outside the house.
Okay.
And what I see are called skeletonized droplets. And so if you look at some of the droplets on the outside of the house, they look partially dried. So what you'll see it's essentially a perimeter stain. So you'll see the exterior of the circle, and then you'll see an absence of blood in the middle of the circle. And what that means is that blood droplet was on the surface long enough for the drying process to begin, and then something disturbed the droplet as it was drying.
Okay,
Now,
I can explain that. And here's the reason. I wish these were forensic pictures.
It's good blood knowledge by him. Although I wish she would have let him finish, but let's see.
Pictures we're looking at, they're journalists' pictures. And I don't know if the investigators got good forensic pictures. I assume they did because they knew they were there. But these are journalists who, after the scene was released 30 hours or so later, and they may have gotten to it 48 hours and walked up and seen it and started rolling video. So you can imagine those blood droplets have now been there for at least 48 hours, and the journalists are walking.
So I'm going to make an assumption about what the temperature was at the time that those blood droplets were deposited. Mid-70s, maybe 80 degrees.
Well, February 1st, 1:47 to 2:28 a.m. I'm going to assume closer to 2:28 a.m. because that's when her pacemaker separates from the Apple device. So 2:28 a.m. in Tucson, Arizona, February 1st.
Let's say even 60 degrees. I'm in Connecticut, so I'm jealous of the temperature no matter what it is in Tucson. That blood was not liquid more than 15 to 20 minutes. So it wouldn't have mattered when the journalist came to the now released scene. Those blood droplets had already dried. They couldn't have changed the appearance of those droplets unless they rehydrated them. And that would have been an obvious alteration. So a skeleton
Highly unlikely. By the way, rehydrating them, highly unlikely because they were covered over. That's a covered entrance.
Yeah, exactly. So, I have to make that, because I've testified, I have to make that, acknowledgement that I recognize that there is a way to do what I'm talking about, but it's so unlikely that it's not an explanation for what it is that we're seeing. But what we do tend to see in scenes is that recently deposited blood can begin to dry, and then the movements of our source of blood, our bleeding victim and or our perpetrator, can disturb those stains and memorialize the activity. Now, these drip stains, the ones that we're talking about, they don't tell us what happened, meaning like what's the injury, what's the what happened during the attack, what is the attack, what's the injury of our victim. What they do for us investigatively is they tell us what's the movement post-event, post-injury. So in one sense, they're not very helpful in kind of helping us understand the incident itself. But where they do come in handy, if you will, is that they tell us who's going where, right? Who is the DNA profile and where are the stains located? So having Ms. Guthrie's DNA on the inside of the threshold and on the outside of the threshold tells us something that seems fairly obvious, is that she's at the threshold of the house. But what's interesting is that if she's at the inside of the threshold long enough for the blood droplets to accumulate there, and she's also at the outside of the threshold long enough for all those blood droplets to accumulate there, there's an inference that we can draw. And there's a phrase that I use when I write reports and I testify it's a not insignificant amount of time. And it's a period of time that's not momentary, but I don't know how long it is. But I know it's not insignificant, right? She's there long enough for that blood to accumulate.
I'm glad you said that, because when I have an untrained eye and I saw it and I thought, these are very vertical. They're not moving quickly and coming in on an angle. And there are enough of them that this is a slow moving event. And I have been told by my source that the blood inside is exactly the same pattern as the blood outside. So the slow moving event started, at least where the blood is concerned, in that hallway.
So let's examine what that even means. If it's the same exact pattern inside the house, that means there's also blood with the oxygen in it. That means there's also probably coughs. There could also be handprints, according to the woman on TMZ, right? If it's the same, I don't know if Ashley's being liberal with that definition of being the same, or is she being exactly precise? I'm not sure.
And so, as the investigator, is this somebody who's struggling to carry her, or she's struggling to walk and is walking slowly? Like, you tell me.
So what I can say about the stains on the outside, and it would be hard for me to offer a well-formed opinion, because I would love to see the inside stains too.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah, it's like, are they a continuation? Or are they two separate patterns? But what I can say about the outside stains is that there's one photograph, there's probably more than one, but there's one that I paid a lot of attention to, that essentially shows droplets falling in the same place. And you're getting this like secondary spatter. And you see a lot of smaller droplets in the same area. And so we tend to see those when you have the source of blood in the same location for, again, a not insignificant period of time. So if the blood is in the same place where it's essentially dripping into itself, you get these tiny droplets that come from the now accumulating pool of blood on that surface. So you get these tiny droplets, appearing around the edge of this now expanding pool. And I say pool because that's what we call it, a pool pattern, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's large. But if you go back to that photograph, you'll see that around some of those drip stains, there's a slightly larger stain that has tiny droplets around it, tiny spatter stains. And what that is, again, preliminary opinion by looking at these photographs quickly, is that that's blood falling into an accumulation of blood that's already on.
Right, but but what I'm saying is, does that mean there's cough patterns inside the house too? Does that mean there's handprint patterns on the inside of the house too? That's what I'm not sure of.
The surface.
So she's standing there for a period of time.
I would say, I can't say she's standing, but I can say the source of blood, which I think we'll say based on the volume is not an object with her blood on it, but it's her, is stationary. Is she standing? I can't tell you because I don't know where the injury is.
I'm glad you, by the way, let me just stop you there because I'm glad you just mentioned that. It's not an object with Nancy's blood on it. I hadn't contemplated that, but you do have to contemplate that if someone uses a weapon and is carrying the weapon out of the house. This is absolutely, in your opinion, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, this is absolutely not the pattern of an object with Nancy's blood on it.
I would say, given the volume that we're seeing here, and given, again, I haven't seen the photographs of the pattern inside, given that there's two patterns, one outside, one inside, it's highly unlikely that it's from an object, because the pattern that comes from an object with somebody's blood decreases over time, right? There's a limit to how much blood you can have on an object. And so as a function of time, the distance between droplets increases because there just simply isn't enough blood, or there isn't more blood to continue dropping. So well,
that's interesting. Please remember to like the video while you're here. Likes are free. Leave your DNA on the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
Person is walking with an object that has blood on it, the distance between those droplets as the person continues to walk increases.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But so again, you're having to look at the journalist's pictures, not the CSI photographs that you'd prefer. But you're seeing that Nancy was in a position for quite some time. This wasn't a slow moving event out that front door.
I would say she was stopped at that threshold for, again, a not insignificant amount of time. Is that 30 seconds? Is that 2 minutes? I can't say, but something's going on at that threshold long enough for that source of blood to create that pattern that I just described, where you had those satellite spatter stains. And, now the question is, well, what's the activity? In particular, when you think that she's being restrained in some way, whether or not she's standing and somebody's restraining her, or whether she's being carried, or whatever the thought is, what's happening in that moment while she's being restrained and those blood droplets are landing on that surface. Now, what you also can say is that there has to be a clear path from the source of the blood to the surface. So if, by way of example, if we believe that the blood is coming from her nose and her mouth, well, then there must be a clear path from her face to the ground, right? So it can't be then dripping onto her clothing. It can't be hitting her pants.
Or
So
her legs as she maybe is walking. It does. And by the way, to me, it looks as though this is a clear vertical path without a lot of dynamic movement.
Yes. So the fact that the stains are circular tells you that the source is directly overhead, because as the source changes its orientation and it no longer is, directly overhead, the shape of the droplets change. So we generally don't need to do this with drip stains, but in other situations, you can actually estimate where the blood's coming from based on the shape of the stains. And in this situation, because we recognize them as drip stains and an overall drip pattern, we wouldn't need to do that. But in other situations, the angle of the droplets is critical for us.
And these don't look
events.
Yeah, these don't look like they have angle.
No, they don't. They're generally circular.
which means it's a slow moving event because you can't continue the movement without some kind of an angle.
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely, there's the spacing of the droplets is generally what tells me something about, I'll say the speed of the event or the speed of the movement. There's two things, right? Because there's also a rate of blood flow, right? How much is the person bleeding? That can also contribute to the spacing of the droplets. So you can see this quickly becomes a pretty complex, situation as you're trying to process all of these, not only the appearance of the blood stains, but what do the characteristics of those blood stains mean in terms of investigative possibilities, in terms of, potential for injuries and where blood might be found later.
Hey, another quick note from my sponsor. Do you think all those natural products that you're buying from the wholesale mom and pop companies are really natural? Yeah, not quite. Many of them have been bought out by mega drop. Looks like % off your first order. Or you can just click the link in the description. Van Man, real ingredients, no exceptions. What about the one area of blood that many people have already discussed, and it looks like, this is common parlance, but an expiration of some blood. That's what it looks like. It looks like a cough. What do you see when you see that particular spot that isn't a nice clear drop?
So
great question by Ashley. What does this look like?
The satellite droplets that I mentioned as being potentially the blood falling into liquid blood could be confused for an expiration or an expirated pattern. Now, the way to distinguish between these is that expirated blood tends to mix with saliva and mucus, right? Because it's coming from either our nose or our mouth. And had somebody been at the scene that either was a bloodstain pattern analyst or knew enough about BPA to have somebody consult and look at these stains, that blood could have been tested for the presence of amylase, which is the enzyme that is in our saliva that helps us digest starch. And that would allow us to distinguish blood coming from this area from other blood sources on our body. And that helps us understand something about the dynamics if we recognize where the blood is coming from.
I can understand that, but I also just sort of see amidst all these direct vertical drops, there's this what looks like a spray. How else could you get a misting of blood but for expiring?
Well, I don't see enough detail in that photograph that I could necessarily infer that it's a spray. So there is a.
All right. So that's a point of contention then. So he doesn't know if that's necessarily a spray. Interesting. Let's see what he thinks it is.
A pattern that we call a projection, right? Where you have blood accumulating generally in your mouth and you can project it. Or, and this is not what I see here at all, you have a breach of a major vessel and you project a large volume of blood, and that's not what we have here at all. So the idea that blood is being sprayed onto the surface is really inconsistent with everything else that we see.
Really?
That I'm seeing from the photograph.
And not coughed?
It could be. Again, I don't see enough in that photograph to say that looks like a cough, but if it were.
So what we would need to see is, what does coughed blood look like? If it's not that, what would be the differences? So he's not definitively ruling it out, but it doesn't seem like he's very convinced that's what it is. I'll Google it and see what I find.
If it looked like it when I was actually looking at a better quality photograph, the easy way, first off, the other thing that you could do just from the photograph is there's a dilution of the blood because, again, it's mixing with saliva. The other thing that you tend.
And Livin just informed me, breaking news, 40,000 subscribers. So thank you very much to everyone who's gotten their rep in on that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. I wouldn't be here without you all. Taken a while, but here we are. So I'm definitely grateful for you all and all of your support. We have a great flock of black sheep here that have helped me do this. Make sure you say hello.
To see is that because there's a like a tackiness to saliva and mucus, when blood is mixed with saliva and mucus, little droplets tend to stick together and cluster together. So the way that the blood behaves changes in a way that you can recognize in the resultant droplets. And I didn't really see that in the photographs that we had. I just saw satellite spatter. But again, you know, if what we needed to do was really interpret, hey, is there a difference between these two patterns and does it have value for us to interpret them? You know, you would take a photograph and really zoom in and see, are there differences between
satellite,
these two?
sorry to interrupt, but for the satellite spatter, don't you need a source that is your direct source that sprays out to the satellite spatter? Because it doesn't look like it in that one misty blood pattern.
So your source of blood actually is the blood that was already on the ground. So if you drop 3 or 4 droplets of blood on the ground, and then you have a 5th droplet hit those 4 droplets that are already there, it creates its own spatter.
Okay.
And if
you see that is a possibility in that particular spot. Because to me, I would have thought you'd need a concentration in the middle to even have the satellite spatter from another blood drop.
Yes, and you don't need a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think if anybody in your audience has ever had a leaky faucet, and if you have 1 or 2 droplets of water land on your faucet, and that 3rd droplet hits, you see water droplets from the water that's already accumulated in the sink, and it's the same concept. And
is that what you see there? Like, you don't see it as a cough or an expiration, you see it as blood droplets that hit other blood droplets and cause that spray?
I'd say between the two options, the one that seems more plausible to me is the satellite spatter. But I'm an evidence-based analyst, and so if I look at that and the stains look diluted and there's artifacts to suggest that you have blood mixed with saliva and or mucus, then I'm thinking it's an expiration pattern.
Can I ask you, because my theory, and it's based on, you know, just my work as a journalist and certainly not having any I haven't seen any evidence that CSI investigators have collected, let's put it that way, is that she was carried out and that he had her over his shoulder and that she may have been bleeding behind him and leaving that pattern behind him that he's not stepping in, and nor is she. But that when he struggles to get through that big heavy door, and maybe there's some time that it takes him to get those doors open and those doors closed, and he's turning around with her, is it possible he may have moved and shifted so that her diaphragm, which might have been over his shoulder, would have gone, huh, and that might have been that source of that blood?
I think it's as plausible as anything else I've heard up to this point. Well, the one part of it that I think is valuable is that it gives us a reason to think that Ms. Guthrie's blood would be on the clothing of the perpetrator, right? And most importantly, on their back. And in a lot of cases, when people don't think to look at their back as a potential source of blood stains, they always worry about what's on the front of them. You know, they look at the front of their pants, the front of their shoes, the front of their shirt, and they don't ever think about the back, especially in situations where they're using objects. And
well, let's hope. I mean, again, this is down the road. If we catch the guy and we can go through his closet and we can find something on the back of a jacket that looks like he was wearing, or did he change clothes that were in the backpack? We don't know. But can I ask you also just the height of the blood droplets? I mean, it would seem to me that if you're dropping blood droplets from somebody who's over your shoulder, that's, you know, a solid 4 feet that feels like it wouldn't drop in a nice, beautiful, round spot. It would spray completely out. What's your thought about the height of where those droplets came from?
So there's a relationship between how far blood falls and the size of the stains. So if we were to drop blood from, you know, a few inches off the ground, it makes a very nice, neat, you know, smaller droplet. And the higher we go, the bigger the droplet gets. But there is a limit. to how big that droplet gets, because there's also a limit to how big a droplet can be in terms of volume. The droplet can only be so big because surface tension holds it together, and there's a limit to that surface tension. But blood can only go as fast as its terminal velocity. You know, much like a skydiver can only go so fast towards the earth. So once we get to blood's terminal velocity, which is about 3 feet off the ground, it doesn't matter how much higher they were above that. There's no difference in how those blood stains look. But Ashley, what's just as important in assessing how blood looks when it's hitting something is, what are the characteristics of the surface? Is it smooth? Is it textured? Is it porous? And so, these are ceramic tiles, and, they might look smooth to us when we're looking at them on a photograph, but there's probably a texture to them there, if we were to touch them, that actually disturbs the blood as it's trying to make a neat circle. And so you'll actually get some satellite droplets potentially from that. But what you'll also get is you'll get like an irregular border. So it won't actually look like a neat circle. It'll look like how kids draw the sun, with the little beams coming off the edge. So you get what we call like scalloped edges. So you'll see a bit of that. But you don't want to mistake that for anything other than what it is. But it's just it's
A
in
surface
reference
pattern.
to the surface. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought of that, but it makes perfect sense.
So this guy seems to be like the blood experts of blood experts here. And make sure you like the video while you're here. Likes are free. Leave your DNA in that like button and subscribe to the channel too. I go live almost every night, probably 5 or 6 nights a week, usually a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern. A couple nights in a row, though, a little bit later than that. And I talk about true crime, current events. We also talk a lot about narcissistic abuse and domestic violence, and I interview a lot of licensed professionals, such as Dr. George Simon, Dr. Z, Dr. Peter Salerno, and other people like myself, Christian John. He has a very interesting perspective as well. People like Man Talks, people like H.G. Tudor. And by the way, folks, if anyone knows him, Jax the Ripper on Instagram. He's an up-and-coming psychopath person. I don't think he's really involved in the self-aware narcissist space, so I'm not sure what to think of him yet. But would you want me to talk to him? He's blown up on Instagram. And like I said, I don't know enough about him yet to see if I'm even on his page. But if you know him, let me know if you would like me to talk to him.
I also wanted to ask you how much you know about the difference between somebody who's my age, and I'm 58, the way I bleed and the way my skin, how tough it is to get me to bleed compared to someone who's 84 on blood thinners. Do you look at your science differently based on the person who's bleeding, or is blood no matter what?
So, the idea that somebody might be on a blood thinner doesn't mean that the viscosity of somebody's blood changes. It's more.
That's a big one. Just because someone's on a blood thinner doesn't mean the viscosity, meaning the thickness of their blood changes. I think that's news to a lot of people in the chat here. I think, because everyone always said blood thinners means the blood must be thinner, right? But that's not necessarily what it means. Let's see what he says. Well, actually, there's a super chat to go over. Well, I'll play this anyway because you paid $2, but Ashley is so dumb. My source, she's got nothing. Well, that's one of those things you can't prove or disprove. But thank you for the super chat.
In reference to how their blood behaves, I'll say chemically, for lack of a better way of describing it. So it doesn't manifest any differently in the way that it appears at a scene. So I don't really need to consider it. Now, there are some disease processes that will have a marked appearance or a marked difference in how blood appears at the scene. This is not one of them. So if she was on blood thinners, or if there, or if somebody has high cholesterol, there is no appreciable difference in how the blood stains appear. And I don't need to take that into consideration when interpreting them. And the normal variation in the viscosity of human blood is something that always sort of factors into the variance. Like, I don't calculate angles to, 3 significant figures. There's always a very sort of wide range that I'm working with. So even if we calculate angles when we're looking at angles of impact, the only way that I'll describe them is, was the person standing? Were they at some, lower height that was not standing, or were they, near the ground? We won't say, oh, they were 2 feet 7 inches off the ground. So there's an appreciation for all the variables that could exist here, and we don't get too specific. And that's the key to staying within the limits of our science.
Do you see that those blood spots came from 3 feet and below or above 3 feet? Could you tell based on just the journalist's photographs?
I wouldn't want to speculate.
It's a good question by Ashley. Do you think the blood was from more or less than 3 feet off the ground? He says he wouldn't want to speculate, but let's see what he says.
Based on the journalist's photographs alone, I would say this, Ashley. If I had to form an opinion about that very issue, I would actually want to conduct some experiments and drop
on that tile.
On that tile. And that would be the best way to form a scientifically derived opinion.
Do you think, Dr. Valentin, then that might have been what they were doing when they put that white tent up for, half a day or a couple of hours at least out in front of her front door, I think 2 or 3 weeks into this crime, that suddenly they might have been doing those kinds of experiments under that tent?
Yeah. Somehow I doubt they were doing that part. If I had to speculate, I would imagine that they were using other reagents, maybe an alternate light source, and they were looking for latent evidence, right? Evidence that they hadn't found during their first pass through the scene. Because you only find the evidence, I know this is going to sound very simplistic and cliche, but you only find the evidence you're looking for. And if you go to your scene with the wrong sense of what your scene is about, you could walk right past the evidence of what actually happened. And in the days and weeks since this happened, has their understanding of this event changed, right? And if it had, and now they're aware of a new bit of information, right? Would that have made them go back to the scene to look for something that they had no idea was relevant the first time they were there?
Well, when that tent came down, guess what was missing? The bracket for the camera that was her doorbell camera, her Nest doorbell cam. It had been up for 3 weeks, and suddenly they decided it was worth taking down. And I kept saying, well, if this guy's putting a bite light in his mouth, well, there's DNA all over those gloved fingers. And then he's messing around with that Nest cam and the bracket. So I was astounded that it wasn't taken earlier, but it ended up being taken.
I can't believe that wasn't seized the first time either. And I mean, you could say, well, we didn't know what was on the video immediately.
Still, so you knew he took the camera.
But you also had the blood evidence right outside the threshold. And so you should have immediately just looked around the threshold to say, well, what's small enough that I can take this with me and bring it back to a laboratory where I can examine it? Take evidence with you that turns out to have no probative value. What did you just spend? Man hours, right?
Nothing.
You spent some time looking at it and it turned out not to have probative value. You wasted nothing.
What's your opinion of them leaving that half moon welcome mat right there? I think it's still there. I honestly, I don't know. I haven't seen a picture recently, but my God, that half moon welcome mat.
$1 million question. What's up with the mat, Mr. Blood Spatter? Yeah, spatter, not splatter, spatter, or Dr. Blood Expert here. Let's see what he says.
Was there for weeks.
It's the same thing. To me, that would be a treasure trove of potential trace evidence. Now, would that have been an absolute nightmare for a trace evidence analyst to shake that out over their bench and get tens of thousands of pieces of sand and, detritus from the environment? Absolutely. But within that, might there have been one or two, three? Could there have been a carpet fiber from the vehicle that the perpetrator drove to the house?
Or his mud.
So he said that should have been a treasure trove of evidence. That's what he said. And of course, I agree with that. Why not? Why not leave every stone unturned? Why leave any stones unturned? That's the expression. Why not try? Right? What do you have to lose by trying? That's what I would say.
From his home on the bottom of his shoe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And-
No, I was very frustrated. And again, I'm not a CSI expert. I'm just a little crime reporter, but I've seen enough of this stuff that I have noticed that is usually very valuable. I couldn't understand why it wasn't. I want to just pull on one more thread before I leave it, because we went on a little bit of a worthwhile tangent. And that was the nature of Mrs. Guthrie's injuries. When you see those blood droplets, and knowing what my source has said about the continuation over the threshold and inside the front entrance of that house, is that a grave injury? Is that somebody grabbed her too hard on the arm? And, when your skin at 84 is so fine and you are on blood thinners, you can easily cause a bleeding injury just by holding somebody too tightly. Is it a punch? What is it that you think it could be?
That's a difficult one. So this is not something I would write in a report or testify about, but I would say investigatively, if we were like we were in the command post and we were talking about next steps, I don't think this is a lethal injury. I don't necessarily think that if she hasn't shown up in an emergency room that, she's not surviving this, right? Because sometimes that's the issue, right? We have scenes where we can recognize that this is a catastrophic injury, and that if the person does not show up in an emergency room, we're dealing with a different kind of case. This isn't that. However, she does need medical attention of some sort. Do we want to go to the drugstores and see who's buying gauze and, hydrogen peroxide? There's all sorts of ways that you can take this. I mean, clearly it's survivable. But what are we combining it with? What else happened that I don't?
By the way, folks, Rooster, the creator of the term hootie snacks for Shadow the Night Owl, my spirit animal, he informs me we are 143 likes away from 500. Let's see if we can get there by the end of the stream here. That would be a good day. 40,000 subscribers and at least 500 likes in the video. Not bad. Could be better, but not bad.
Well,
physical evidence of.
Right.
Exactly.
The other question is, and I think it's always hard to ask these questions because we've all hoped that Mrs. Guthrie would be found alive. Even Savannah is intimating that she wants her mother home for a final resting place at this point. So there's a lot of reality that's coming, into focus. There's still optimism. Sheriff certainly seems optimistic. He wants the perpetrator to drop her off somewhere. I'm not sure where that comes from, but is that the kind of bleeding that comes from a dead person or a live person?
So I would not have a way of distinguishing between those two, at least not from what I've seen in these photographs. And, and I share your feelings about all of this. It's so frustrating. And, my heart goes out to the Guthrie family and, the simultaneous national coverage of, their mother's disappearance, but at the same time, perhaps even needing this coverage to keep the spotlight on this case. Because I remember working cases that had no coverage, that I didn't understand why, and cases that had international coverage, and I didn't understand why. So I can appreciate the double-edged sword here. And given what I saw, you would not be able to distinguish whether or not.
We got a great question here, but you have to answer. Lindsay asks, hootie snacks. Jared, please explain because I've never seen you eating hootie snacks. Well, my spirit animal of the show is Shadow the Night Owl. And Shadow the Night Owl, he likes hootie snacks. Many black sheep are often night owls, in my experience, because maybe they had a narcissistic parent and they were criticized and belittled, and they felt like they had to walk on eggshells. They weren't allowed to be themselves. But there was one time a day that wasn't the case, and that was at nighttime when everyone else went to bed. They were no longer in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and they could finally relax. The nervous system could relax. And Hootie snacks are for Shadow the Night Owl. I should get a pet owl in here so I can feed him little Hootie snacks during the show. Wouldn't that be cool? Like I'm a pirate with my owl, although I think it might be illegal to have an owl as a pet. So I would like have to rescue them. I'd have to rescue an owl to make it not illegal.
The person was still alive or not, but perhaps there are other aspects of this that we're not privy to that potentially could change my opinion on that, but certainly not based on the photographs I could say anything.
If Mrs. Guthrie was killed inside the home and this perpetrator removed her body and left that pattern behind inside and outside over that front threshold, what kind of a circumstance would cause that kind of a blood pattern? Because we don't bleed after we die.
Well, it's not that we don't bleed after we die. It's the matter of there's nothing creating pressure in the way that we would if we were still alive. I can create a source of blood in somebody who's dead if I simply reposition the body so that the injury is, lower than the rest of the body, so that you have this passive pressure, for lack of a better description.
Gravity.
Exactly. So you could imagine if you had somebody on a stretcher and their arm was hanging off the side of the stretcher, that could create it. And so you'd have scenarios like that. But, aside from that, I mean, it is suggestive of it. There's just not enough there so here I have to exercise some restraint and say, scientifically, I have no way of distinguishing between the two, but investigatively, what would I say if I saw that? I said it tends to lean in the direction of her being alive.
And then the other question I'm going to ask you, and this is a really hard one too, more on your Connecticut cop hat here, because you have to noodle all the possibilities, all the theories, all the scenarios in order to, move along in an investigation. Knowing what you know about this crime scene, knowing about this blood pattern going from inside the house over the front door and to the outside of the house and being the same all the way. And knowing what we've seen on the front doorbell cam and that my source says the back door was left wide open. What would your theory be about what happened to Mrs. Guthrie?
I don't know enough to say what happened in the house. I mean, your guess is as good as my guess, is as good as anybody else's. And I'm a person that is really driven by physical evidence. And physical evidence tells a story. And let me explain it this way. When you open up the door to Nancy Guthrie's house, that house tells a story. How does she keep her house? Like, what level of order is her house normally? And what would draw my attention is, what are the alterations to that normal state? So if you tend to be a person who keeps your house neat, where are the disruptions? Where are the disturbances to that otherwise neat state? Now, that's not to say that you could have, you weren't attacked in the place that still looks neat, but I'm drawn to the changes to the status quo, right? Most people will say, signs of a struggle, but I guarantee there are people listening to this, the whole house looks like a sign of a struggle. That's how they live their day to day.
No,
So
my
that's-
kids' bedrooms. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I usually joke around, because I'm here at a university, and most dorm rooms look like a sign of a struggle all the time. So we can't really look at things that simplistically, right? You're looking for a change to the normal state. So I would have to look at that house and let myself get drawn to what looks, I'm not going to say out of place, because that's not really the way to think about this, but what looks recently changed, right? That she didn't have a chance to bring it back to the normal state. But I can't let myself get drawn to that without first walking through and looking at everything in a methodical way. It would be like reading a book and skipping to page 276. I wouldn't have any sense of who the characters were.
Mm-hmm.
So I will understand what's out of place once I digest the entire scene. Then
Well,
I become really well versed in what is the normal state for that house. And it's only when I do that that I can really sense where in that house are the areas that I now need to focus on, because I work with physical evidence. So you could swab that house and get 1,000 exhibits and they're all useless because you didn't apply the right frame of reference for how you're going to do this. I could do it that way and find 3 places there that clearly look like something happened here based off subtle cues, and find 20 swabs, and those potentially are more probative. And in a lot of cases, people will walk in, whether it's ego, whether it's to be right first, people will rush to figure out what happened instead of hanging back and letting a scene like that essentially talk to you, right? By soaking it in, working the scene methodically, and then letting that drive the process.
Do you think that happened here?
In almost every case like this that I've seen, and in the cases I've worked that have had this level of scrutiny, the pressure of multiple agencies having to cooperate, the pressure of the media, and now exacerbate all of that by the pressure of, a famous family being involved. It creates unforced errors. And errors always complicate things.
Yeah, but the sheriff is saying that he doesn't regret anything. He doesn't think he made any errors. He doesn't think that he returned the scene too early, even though I think in week 2 or 3, he admitted that he had done that. I'm not 100% sure why he's saying these things, but in your estimation, do you think that the investigative, teams let that house tell them the story? Or do you think they told the story too quickly?
I feel very confident in saying that first they let the house go too quickly, unless the Guthrie family was beyond adamant that they wanted the house back, and I can't imagine why. I would have held that house for as long as I possibly could, particularly because this is one of those very few cases where forensic evidence is leading the investigation. In most situations, we conduct our investigation and forensic evidence is running in parallel, or forensically what we're doing is we are confirming what we're figuring out investigatively, right? We're almost like a lagging indicator of what you figure out investigatively. This is one of the very few cases where everyone's waiting with bated breath to know what the forensic testing results are so that we can figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And this only happens in maybe 5 and 10% of the cases I ever worked, where everybody wanted to know what I had to say about what to do, because if the forensic testing doesn't give us useful information, we're stuck. And that doesn't happen very often.
This is the word that keeps coming up, is stuck.
Yes.
That or stumped. And I guess I'll leave it there, because I feel as though as we learn more, I'm going to be calling you again to see where these new puzzle pieces fit in and if they take us in a new direction. Dr. Valentin, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation.
No, it's my pleasure, Ashley. Thanks for calling.
So there you have it, folks. Day 52, not a good day for Sheriff Chris Nanos. I got to say, I'll bet you he was listening. It was live streaming, right? So I'm sure he was like somewhere having to listen to all this, or at least he's got a representative who's going to give him the cliff notes on everything that was said. Where that goes from here, maybe subscribe, because I will figure it out and I will put together something to tell you where it goes from here, especially that whole recall effort. And I got some more information for you coming tomorrow on this podcast on Drop Dead Series. Don't forget, subscribe so that you don't miss these episodes. Something else that's just like, what the actual F with regard to this crime scene. So again, that's coming tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening today and for watching.
And again, all of you, if you like lake boats and bridges, you check out Livin's podcast on Spodcast and Apple and wherever you get your podcasts, where you can learn about animals, the USS Liberty, and more. Lots of things. She'll get mad that I said USS Liberty as a selling point, but it is interesting. They're just talking about the splatter bee, talking about how he's not sure that it was a cough. So I was thinking it was more from a cough, but he says, yeah, it might be, but he's not sure. There was a woman on TMZ saying that there's oxygen in the blood that tells you something. And she was saying, so there's handprints even. There's something like hands involved in the blood. So I was like, wow, I haven't heard too many people say that. But she did. So, but the point of it all would be, what can you do with it? What does that tell you? Are you able to get DNA from that? That would be the important part, right? I mean, in these cases, unless someone tells them themselves because they're drunk, how are you catching them? DNA? Maybe that tattoo evidence? Although I do think the tattoo evidence is better for ruling somebody out at this point. I'm not sure it would be good for actually catching them because there's so many people with tattoos. So it's tricky. I mean, Jen Koffendorfer says she's looking forward to the geo-fencing, tracking someone by a cell phone. And maybe they can, but I don't think they had a cell phone on them. I think they had their walkie-talkies. And if that was the case, and I said they, not he, because I think there's more than one, but when would they even have a cell phone? I don't know. When would they be able to find that person? I don't know. So to me, just call her Jen, short for Jen Koffendorfer. It always seems like you should say Koffendorfer for some reason. Who did you share a lot of animal, but not anymore? Monk. Well, not anymore because he's in jail. Broken vessel. Welcome. What's over, Broken? An animal. I do not think that Nancy Guthrie's in a hospital right now. I wouldn't think that. No, there's certainly no jammer confirmed in this case either. No good DNA results either, B. There's touch DNA from the home, but there's no matches in CODIS. So now they're going to do genetic genealogy on it. But we don't even know, like, if it's a good sample for that either. We don't know. It could be anyone. Because if it's touch DNA, it could be anyone she came in contact with for the week. We don't know. So it's getting rough. I mean, Ashley Banfield was talking about the 47 days thing. So, because that, or 40 day 46 is when they caught Brian Koberger. But hey, yeah, got 110 likes to go to get the 500. We should be able to get there. So, but also, chat, I need to figure out what else am I going to talk about this week. We can talk about the Duggar case, the CSA with them, or going into more cult dynamics with it, because apparently that entire family was a cult, apparently. I don't know much about them. So we can go over that maybe. The Corey Richens case is nothing until sentencing, I guess, right? And then there's what? What else is even out there? The JLR case? Oh, that's what we'll do. Someone said to me, well, two things. Savannah is interviewing someone tomorrow, apparently. And JLR's ex is coming out with evidence on Friday. Have you heard about that, B? That's another thing we talked about. JLR's domestic violence allegations. Have you heard about that? Livin's doing the pigeon. Doing the burp burp pigeon. That is true, B. No lies detected. A cooking episode. I do like to make oven baked chicken. Garlic baked chicken, I should say. That's one of my favorite recipes. Jamie, representing Northwest Arkansas. That's where the Duggars are. Although their crime was committed in Panama, Florida. Thank you, Miss Kim. Please remember to like and subscribe. We're creeping up on 500 likes. Subscribe to the video or the channel. Look at this. Thank you for the super chat, but JLR shall not be president. No. No. But thank you. I'm an owl person over pigeons. Monk intrigue video at Tommaso's gate. I think we played that. Is that the one where he told someone to go away? Is that what that is? Let's see. So OC, you gotta tell me which one because of the 100 videos. What's it titled? That is better, Jamie. He's allegedly accused, B, of strangling his ex, Magnolia, named Jamie Phillips, 24 times, financially abusing her, threatening to kill her. When she confronted him with porn on his phone, he allegedly punched her in the face. What about it, Deb? There's a whole police report that said that she had a black eye, bruised ribs, and the police officer said it. Read some of whose book? JLR's book? Now, what video are we looking for here?
So, like I was saying before, it feels like in terms of the investigation, this is the phase that is, boring. I check the news every single day. I'm sifting and sifting. And personally, for me, there is absolutely nothing intriguing at the moment. I mean, there's the stuff about JLR and he might be in some hot water. I'm going to hope that none of this is true, but that's not the brand of news, the content that we do here. Inspiration can come from the unlikeliest of places. And it did for me. Now, most of you know that I am not running a witch hunt here, right?
What is this video even about?
Our topics expand where the most compelling news takes us. We're not pointing, for the sake of pointing. Something has to make us look. Now, with that out of the way, allow me to point out something peculiar that stemmed from a very unlikely place. So if we were to go back and to sift through the comments of our past videos, we would come across a comment that pretty much tells me to stop trying to pin it on Tommaso or his bandmates. Stop using their old pictures to try to overlay, on the...
This is Monk's Intrigue or something? I mean, OC Girl wanted this on. Comparing Tommaso and Walk. I mean, I don't think it's Tommaso in the front step.
Perp or something to that effect. It was not a positive comment, to say the least, okay? And one that had no merit, at least to me, because the only early Black band member that we ever took an interest in is Tommaso. Dominique Evans, okay? His eyes never really did it for me. Plus, if Tommaso is 5'9" to 5'10", then Evans is a few inches shorter, apparently, okay? So I never really looked his way. How about Walter Gonsalves, right? I mean, he sure has pretty eyes as well, right? Just like the perp does. But even he hasn't sparked any interest, and I'm not even sure why. I always found Tommaso as an interesting character because, I mean, he is the last person to admittedly see Nancy alive, and then he proceeds to just withdraw, behind a cloak of mystery. I mean, imagine the countless interview offers that are presented to Tommaso, right? And I'm pretty sure they would provide any type of conditions that he needed or asked for. And still, there is nothing. We know he is not shy, right, of the limelight. So it basically comes down to maybe he just doesn't want to, which is, I will say, perfectly fine. I would do the same thing if I didn't want to do something, okay? It's his choice. And so we never got to really know Tommaso. We never got an interview. We never even got a story from somebody that knew him, maybe just to give us an inkling of what he is like in real life. So we're left to wonder. And oh wells, right? Let's see if we can be fruitful elsewhere. And so last night I decided to watch all of the crotch holster guys' videos from that Nest camera, the images, whatnot. I mean, the footage only equates to roughly 40 seconds. And I watched that thing over and over again because honestly, we cannot let the FBI's magical footage that they just pulled out of the heavens go to waste. So literally, I sat there for approximately 2 hours watching the same 40 seconds of video on loop, pausing it at certain sections, slowing it down, until I noticed something about the crotch holster guy's walk. He appears to have a slight hitch to his step, which I always attributed to cautious night walking. Then I noticed his feet does this funny thing where it juts outwardly once his left leg is extended right here. Now watch his right leg right here. Now, before you kill me for wasting your time, let me show you this photo of the perp standing upright in his natural position, I guess I could say. Now, you could see his feet face outwardly still. So when his legs are straight, his feet point out. I looked this up, and the medical term is called out-toeing. So boring. So we're going to call it what it is. The man has duck feet. I want you guys to notice this as well. The slight bowing of his legs. Now, some people have straight legs. Some people have knock knees. Our perp appears to have, I mean, if only slightly, bow legs. Now, I'm going to warn you. You might get the chills when I show you this because you know who else has a very similar posture? Tommaso Cioni. He also has duck feet. But monks, come on. The perp looks a lot thicker. Well, first, I want to say that's what she said. And second, it was between 30 to 40 degrees at night, guys. I can almost guarantee you that the perp was wearing double layers. I've been in that cold of weather, even colder, and I would do that double layer, which I will say I'm speaking from firsthand experience, right? Now, because of this, it would also help puff up, the perp a little bit. A fortunate or by design disguise for his body, okay? Now, don't ask me how, but sometimes we remember the most obscure, useless information. So for some reason, I recall somebody saying early on, it was either Banfield, maybe it was Megyn Kelly, but when the perp turned around on the Nest camera footage, some lady said, "Now look at his mud butt." Now, I admit,
No, OC girl, I'm not going to remove my video. What are you talking about?
my childish humor thought that was funny. Maybe that's why I remembered it. But I also remember thinking from the very beginning upon seeing, the crotch holster guy, that he had double layers on. In the beginning, that was not even a question for me. Double layered everything. I used to do it myself, and I too would have mud butt because I had a whole pair of sweats underneath whatever pants I was wearing. And it was fascinating that this relatively random thought, in the past actually feels kind of important right now. Just look at his pants. I bet there's a pair of sweats underneath those nondescript.
I mean, my video is not even blocking anything anyway, so why would I remove it?
Loose pants. I know. It's not solid evidence of any sort, and you're still not buying it. Well, luckily for both of us, I ain't selling it, because if I had to convince you of anything, then the evidence was just not good enough, okay? However, while you're at the monk's shop of working theories, I'd like to show you something before you leave. So in those 2 hours plus of me burning my eyes over the crotch holster guy, my curiosity started to, veer towards other possible videos that I could go over. And so I went over, the Savannah Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, and Tommaso's walk to Nancy's memorial, which was in front of her house, gifted by the community and YouTubers alike. I also noticed something about Tommaso's way of walking as well. He too has a slight hitch in his left leg just before the leg motions forward. As his leg goes forward, his foot comes up and juts outwardly each and every step. I mean, that's just a part of the way he walks, right? As part of his gait, as all the retired FBI agents tell us, he too has a duck walk. What do you think would happen if I were to put Tommaso and the perp's walk side by side for you? Okay, so have your wallet ready because you might like this readjusted working theory.
The guy on the porch isn't Tommaso. The guy's taller.
Now,
and if they had it on there for 1 second, I'm not going to remove my screen for 1 second.
Of course, walking like a duck doesn't mean the man's guilty by any stretch, right? This has to be something that the FBI has already looked into, right? But you know what I'm learning about this case? I'm learning a lot about the FBI.
And I will say, anyone who tells me what to do on my channel, it's a pretty entitled thing, honestly.
That the FBI is just cool. They are the cool kids. Just like Tommaso, they got on those shades. And the FBI, they just simply share nothing with the public. However, unlike Nanos, the FBI will never, ever clear anyone until they are done with their investigation, once the case closes. So how can these two men appear to have a very similar walk and even share the same stance with a very similar bow-leggedness. I mean, is God running out of ideas on how to create Italian men? I mean, not to say that the Perp is Italian. If you remember in a recent video, I mentioned that while I was doing face overlays, I realized that it just never really felt right or correct. Because as I was doing it, I realized that I basically have to search for a picture that was taken of that person from about, midsection level.
So what to me it looks like the guy in the porch cam, his legs are longer. His body type's a little bit different. I agree the gait looks similar, but there's also differences.
Right angle from where that Nest camera was placed. And you would have to take that picture with a wide angle lens, and that is just not happening, right? The closer that you get to this lens, the more distortion that you have. Everything just gets a little bit rounder. Even if the eyes fit, even if the mouth fits, it never felt right. So after a while, I just stopped looking at overlays, okay? But a gate, however, is very compelling. I mean, have we not heard former FBI agent after former FBI agents talk about the Perp's gate since the Nest camera footage dropped? So I'm pretty sure that it's important if they think it's important. So how does this affect our working Tommaso theory? Okay, so I will say that his absence from any part of the media might hold a clue. So let's start by saying that Savannah loves her sister and Tommaso is her sister's husband. So I 100% support Savannah for backing her brother-in-law, and I expect her to keep doing so. So that being said, in my opinion, the Brian Enton video where Savannah, Annie, and Tommaso are visiting their mom's house, right? In this updated working theory, we are going to include this event. And because we feel that Tommaso has been avoiding the media, this has to be an event that Tommaso did not want to be a part of. However, I feel Tommaso was caught, in that situation when it happens to do with family, right? You kind of got to go. Because I can't imagine Savannah wanting to go to this memorial alone without her sister, right? She definitely wanted Annie there, right? Her beloved sister. And she definitely wanted her beloved brother-in-law there, Tommaso. Because we also have to imagine the alternative and how bad that would look if Savannah Guthrie visited her mom's little memorial there that was left by the community, had to just stand there alone, mourning her mother, right? That wouldn't look very good.
So what I think is it's certainly possible someone in the family hired someone to do it. I think that could definitely be. And could it have been Tommaso or Annie who did that? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I admit there are some similarities in the gait. I just think the person on the porch cam is a little bit different.
For Annie and Tommaso. So yeah, they kind of had to go. Now, I'm sure we've all heard the saying that the eyes are the windows to the soul. So seeing Savannah take off her sunglasses was what we all expected. I'll leave that at that. Now, I've been formulating a theory about a possibility of why he doesn't want to be on camera, but it's still a theory that I need to work on, and it might never even see the light of day. But the picture that you're looking at right here is why this spark of ideas came about. I would also bet that you guys can never guess what this theory is. But if you do, and I see it in the comment section, I would be so surprised. Now, before you guys go and protect the ones that you love, you guys should give the Maura Murray case a try, because I've been working hard on it and I think you guys would enjoy it. If you enjoy my coverage of Nancy Guthrie with the Maura Murray case, I mean, it's 2 decades old. It's hard not to know about this case. And I will say I am kind of an outsider. I know about the case, but I don't know about the case. Okay, so I went in actively trying to block all the noise that comes with a cold case of this age, right? I'm trying to stick to the facts, just sticking to police reports and timelines. And I think I have a good idea of what happened to Maura that night. Now, you should see a playlist for the Maura Murray case right about now. Give it a try. You'll be surprised.
All right. So we watched that for OC Girl. Although she might be upset at me because I said the whatever. But whatever. What did Heather say? Ah, that's no good, Heather. Blinded by the light, they say, eh? Rain. And I miss you like the desert misses the rain. Monk Intrigue is interesting. He likes the solo vids. He probably has like an editor. Me personally, I prefer to do interviews. I like talking to people. Well, and that's fine, Rooster. That can happen. He's all right. I mean, he's a newer channel, and some of his videos do really well about the case. So it's someone to keep an eye out on. Only 91 videos. That's insane. Is he famous from something else or something? Interesting. Well, it's about time to wrap it up here, though. I'm glad B could stop by here. So of the 1,265 people here, surely 91 can like it to get it to 500. You have a great night, Heather. Thanks for joining us, B. Black Sheep, Melissa, have a great night. Always hyped to see No Hype. Rooster, you have a great night as well, sir. We got several Matts in here as well. User, thank you to Miss Kim and Songbits and Livin for modding. Check out Livin's podcast, Lakes, Boats, and Bridges. No George. George gets a demerit. Cat, no cat tonight, by the way. I forgot about that. Have a good night, Kel. Lindsay. Mace. Danielle's gone already, too. And that's the other thing. OC girl thinks someone in this chat was whining like a bitch, she said. Where this chat had no hate. What happened was people from that other channel came over here. Not JLR, but the other one. And they had a problem. We didn't have a problem. They had a problem. And so they said some things. And they made sure the point was known. That doesn't mean someone here is being a bitch. Right, Miss Kim? But all right, Paula. Discord's tough, Rooster. OC girl said people in here were being a bitch because something about the IR. And I said that wasn't really what was happening. They just don't like people playing their stuff. So that's it. I mean, JLR, there's more of them like that there too, for sure. JLR has a couple flying monkeys in here. But I mean, all we're saying is what's been alleged about him. We're not guilting. I'm saying what OC said. That's not what I said. You scroll back up in the chat and see it. Appreciate you too, Lindsay. Formless like the water, right, B? You have a great night, Kel. Oh, yeah. Comments and the haters, that's why I let them come in here. Because it helps despite their efforts a lot of times. Striking and copywriting does not help. but other things do help. Ah. What did he say about that, Mace? I'll be curious what they said about that. What did they say? You have a great night, Autumn. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I need some hootie snacks too, Mr. Rooster. Yes, Tim, everyone I play is very good to the channel. Brian, Ashley, Tony Brewski, Law and Crime Network. Who else do we play? Deets, Truth and Transparency. Everyone we watch is good. So I always tell everyone, make sure you watch them too. Like, I want you to support them. I want you to subscribe to them, watch their stuff. That's the deal, right? They let me do that. And so I want the people that support me to also support them too. Well, we're wrapping it up here, Shelly. Don't worry. If you want to rewind, you can go back to the beginning. Because there's nothing else to say right now. We're about to press close. I'm a bitch, I'm a lover. I know the song you're talking about, Heather. Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everyone. All the flock of black sheep. Shelly, rewind the video. We got 3 hours and 50 minutes of coverage. We're wrapping it up. I know all the music, Heather. Good. That's the deal, right? And the people who know and have what I would consider a prosperity mentality, they'll say, oh yeah, Jared's getting more people. He'll help our channels too. Eva, thanks for being here, Eva. Thank you, Rooster. I know you do. We got a great flock here. We really do. So like the video while you're here, subscribe. Another JLR for president. I'll collect $2 to say JLR for president. Not that I would vote for him, but Kron's $2 will vote for him. So thank you for the super chat. All right, everybody. Over and out. I'll see you tomorrow night.